regular meeting. Councilmember John Faust asked that item 1 under new business be clarified that the infill was redone and needle machine was purchased this year and the infill work laser leveling was done several years ago. Councilmember Kurt Raffel made a motion to accept the minutes as read with the clarification noted. Councilmember Anstey seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item A under old business. Here we recognize City Manager Brandon Douglas to present a request from Land Bridge Acquisitions LLC to applicant to request change in zoning of a portion 3.65 acres of parcel number 041015 located at 1317 West Church Street from C2 General Commercial to R3 High Density Multifamily Residential. The parcel is owned by Bob Wigington as trustee of Wigington family. Mr. Douglas stated that on May 9, 2019, an application was heard by the Planning Commission requesting the property be rezoned as R3. He stated that this is a portion of an approximately 15-acre tract which has been surveyed out of the parcel. He stated that the Planning Commission voted to tie, and Chairman Walker voted to break the tie for a 2-1 in favor of the rezone. Mr. Douglas asked that the mayor recognize Gary Hammond, representing Land Bridge Acquisitions LLC. Mr. Hammond presented the plans for the property. Discussion with council followed. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion. Councilmember Sonny Proctor made a motion that the parcel be approved for an R3 zoning. Councilmember John Powell seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item B under old business, Mayor Weaver recognized Attorney Bill Pickett and Mr. Douglas to update the council on the subletting of city property. Mr. Douglas stated that due to scheduling, he had not been able to contact Mr. Pickett regarding the subletting. Mr. Pickett stated that he had spent some time researching and that his gut reaction was that the city should not be subletting the property. He stated that he did not think the city had the authority to lease the property. He stated that cities with 300,000 or more in population had specific statutory authority in order to lease parks. He stated that the taxpayers of the city of Jasper actually own this property, and this would alienate the property, take the city out of the loop, and lose control over our own destination. He also stated it would violate the insurance and could waive sovereign immunity. He also stated that the JYSA was not a legal organization. Councilmember Faust stated that they are a 501c3 organization. Mr. Pickett stated that they are still not registered with the Secretary of State's office. Mayor Weaver stated that it may be time for the use of the facilities to come back under the umbrella of the city staff and council instead of having people that we do not know schedule our fields. More discussion followed. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion to table the issue until Mr. Douglas can come back with a plan on how the city will schedule use of the fields. Councilmember Kurt Raffel made such motion. Councilmember Anstey seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item C under old business, Mayor Weaver called on Mr. Douglas to present the service delivery area map amendment for the changes approved in the last regular council meeting. Mr. Douglas stated that he had reached out to DCA to find out how to go about the amendment. Mayor Weaver stated that the DCA has specific steps outlining how to change the map. Mayor Weaver stated that this would be kept on old business on the next regular meeting. Councilmember Anstey made a motion to table this item until next month's meeting. Councilmember Tony Fountain seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item D under old business, Mayor Weaver called on Mr. Douglas to present to council an update on the zoning issue at Mountain City Business Park. Mr. Douglas stated that he had been putting together information to determine what type of businesses are in the business park. He stated he planned to get with Brad Billbeck and the other business owners in the park to determine the types of businesses. He stated that there are only 21 uses that do not overlap in C2 and M1, and that he had about 20% of remaining businesses to determine under which zoning use they fell. Mayor Weaver recognized Mr. Dillback to explain to council his predicament with the current zoning. Mr. Dillback stated that he owned 8 properties in the park, 4 of which are not developed. He stated that he had put a hold on building on those until he knew what he can build. Mayor Weaver stated that these questions should be put before the Planning Commission so that the property owners and citizens can come to a public hearing and speak their opinion, and then bring the recommendation to City Council for them to make a decision. Discussion with council followed. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion for council to table this issue to give the city manager more time to do research and have more information to provide to council. Councilmember Anstey made such motion. Councilmember Tony Fountain seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item E under old business. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion to table Manitoulin LLC annexation revisited until the next regular meeting. Councilmember Kurt Raffel made such motion. Councilmember Anstey seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item A under new business, Mayor Weaver recognized Mr. Douglas and Haley Bucci with the Jasper Merchants Association to request street closings for 3 different events. Mr. Douglas stated that on Thursday, October 31st, the merchants wish to close Main Street from 4 to 6. On Saturday, December 7th, request to close Main Street from 4 to 8 p.m. And on Tuesday, December 31st, request to close Main Street from 7 p.m. until Saturday, January 1st, 1 a.m. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion. Councilmember Kurt Raffel made a motion to approve the street closure request for Halloween, Christmas parade, and for New Year's Eve. Councilmember Anstey seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item B under new business, Mayor Weaver called on Mr. Douglas to present Main Street closure for Prevent Child Abuse Pickens long table event. Mr. Douglas stated that June Ash with Prevent Child Abuse Pickens have requested that North Main Street in front of 61 Main Restaurant be closed for the long table event from noon until 11 p.m. on Saturday, September 21st. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion. Councilmember Kurt Radfield made a motion to approve the street closure as requested. Councilmember John Fowle seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item C under new business, Mayor Weaver recognized Mr. Douglas and Terry New, resident of Connell Street, to present stormwater issues on Connell Street and Elizabeth Street. Mr. Douglas stated that the flash flood that occurred Friday, July 19th created stormwater runoff that negatively impacted several residences. He also gave an update on the Elizabeth Street sinkhole. He stated that repairing the street would cost less than $20,000 and SPLOST money could be used to pay for the repair. Mayor Weaver recognized Mr. New to discuss the flooding issues on Connell Street. Mr. New stated that several homes on Connell Street were affected by flooding. He asked if the city had a stormwater easement on Connell Street so that the drains could be repaired. Lonnie Waters stated that he had researched and had not found an easement. Mr. New shared with council paperwork showing an easement. Discussion followed. Mayor Weaver stated that he would let Bill Pickett and Mr. Douglas research as to where the city actually has an easement for the stormwater drainage system before the city attempts repair work. Councilmember Sonny Proctor stated that he had been contacted by citizens in some other locations that had flooded as well. More discussion followed. Mayor Weaver stated that council would keep this as an item on the next meeting in order to see what the city can do to help its citizens. Mr. Douglas requested council authorize up to $20,000 in SPLOST monies to repair the Elizabeth Street sinkhole. Councilmember Kurt Radfield made such motion. Councilmember Anson seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item D under new business, Mayor Weaver recognized Mr. Douglas and Water and Sewer Superintendent David Hall to present to council a proposal from Geosystems Engineering for subsurface investigation for the water pollution control plant expansion. Mr. Hall stated that Turnipseed Engineers had sent a proposal from Geosystems to test the ground at the wastewater plant. He stated he is asking for council's approval for them to ensure the ground is stable enough for the additions. He stated the cost will be from $7,200 to $9,800. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion to approve $7,200 to $9,800 requested by Mr. Hall to hire Geosystems to perform a subsurface investigation at the wastewater plant. Councilmember Anson made such motion. Councilmember Kurt Radfield seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item E under new business, Mayor Weaver recognized Mr. Douglas to present the bids received for the city's paving project. Mr. Douglas stated that the bids were opened on July 9th. He stated the city received the following bids: Johnson Paving LLC, $1,297,827.64. Caldwell Construction, $1,256,196.21. Northwest Georgia Paving Incorporated, $1,217,000, C.W. Matthews Contracting Company, $1,396,075.69. He said the apparent low bid was from Northwest Georgia Paving Incorporated at $1,217,062.50. Mayor Weaver asked Lonnie Waters to call out the street names that were to be paved. Mr. Waters read the list of streets. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion to approve the low bid of Northwest Georgia Paving in the amount of $1,217,062.50. Councilmember Kurt Radfield made such motion. Councilmember Anson seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item F under new business, Mayor Weaver called on Mr. Douglas to present to council a capital lease resolution. He stated that this resolution must be approved in order to secure the tax-exempt financing through GMA for vehicles and equipment that council had previously approved. City Clerk Lisa Hoyle read the resolution, which will be made a part of these minutes and attached hereto. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion to approve the resolution as read. Councilmember Anson made such motion. Councilmember Tony Fountain seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item G under new business, Mayor Weaver recognized School Superintendent Carlton Wilson to discuss the proposed reversal of traffic on Stegall Drive. Mr. Wilson stated that he had come to discuss the reversal of Stegall Drive, but it had come to his attention that there were still some issues and questions, so at this time he is requesting council table until next month's meeting so that these issues and questions can be addressed. He stated that the reason for the request was when the elementary school has a major event, the traffic is shut down all the way down to Main Street. He stated that it would benefit the school system from a safety standpoint as they could line traffic up all the way down to Chamber if necessary. He stated that he felt this would be more benefit to the city so as to get the traffic off Main Street. Mayor Weaver stated that when Highway 53 becomes one way coming into the city, the reversal of Stegall would provide a way traffic to flow the opposite direction if need be. Discussion followed. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion to keep this item under old business. Councilmember Kurt Raffel made a motion to table this item. Councilmember Ann Snavy seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Item H under new business. Mayor Weaver recognized Mr. Douglas to present the proposed closing of Stegall Drive between Main Street and Mark Whitfield Street. Mr. Douglas stated that if the traffic was going to be reversed on Stegall Drive, there could be a potential problem of traffic dumping out on the main street. Mayor Weaver then recognized Johnny Green and Randy Glosson, the owners of Angry Mama's Auction, who stated that they would be in support of the closing of Stegall between Main and Mark Whitfield Street. Discussion followed. Mayor Weaver recognized Carrie Rowland, who stated she would also like to close that portion and make it a green space. Mayor Weaver stated to table this item along with item G. Item I under new business. Mayor Weaver called on Mr. Douglas to present the proposed dedication of Piedmont Village streets to the city. Mr. Douglas stated that the developer had provided the city with a survey of the roads and rights of way, and he is asking that the city accept the roads. Mayor Weaver entertained a motion. Councilmember Kurt Raffel made a motion to dedicate the roads of Piedmont Village development to the city. Councilmember Ann Snavy seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Mayor Weaver stated that council needed to go into executive session in order to consult with legal counsel regarding pending threatened litigation. Councilmember Ann Snavy made a motion to go into executive session. Councilmember Tony Fountain seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Mayor Weaver closed the meeting. Councilmember Kurt Raffel made a motion to come out of executive session. Councilmember Ann Snavy seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously. Mayor Weaver opened the meeting. Mayor Weaver asked for committee updates. Councilmember Proctor gave an update on the Economic Developer Hiring Committee and the Roper Pool Property Development Committee. City Manager Brandon Douglas gave an update on the Cost of Construction Aid Committee. Mr. Douglas gave an update on the SPLOST 2020 Committee. Finance Director Lisa Hoyle gave the financial report for the month of July 2019. Lonnie Waters gave a report on roads and streets. Chief Gray Lovell gave a report of police activities for the month of July 2019. Chief Steve Roper gave a report of fire activities for the month of July 2019. Being no other business to come before council, Mayor Weaver adjourned the meeting. Council is scheduled to convene next at the public meeting to be held August 7, 2019, and the regular meeting to be held September 9, 2019.
Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as read.
Motion to approve is read. Second. Motion is second. Discussion. Being none, all in favor, vote by show of hands. It's unanimous. Let it be known that we also are missing 2 council members. Mr. Fountain, Mr. Raffel. I'd like to welcome all of our guests, if I missed the opportunity. Welcome to the City of Jasper Council meeting. And our new mayor-elect, or mayor-unelected, or whatever you might be. Steve, would you stand up, please, and be acknowledged? Mr. Looney, also a newly re-elected-elect, whatever he might be. Jim, would you please stand, please? And of course, John was unopposed as well. I could have just used the word unopposed. How about that? Much clearer. With that being said, we're going to old business. I'm sorry?
That's one more.
Public meeting.
Oh, okay. Sorry about this. We have one more reading.
The public meeting Wednesday, August 7, 2019, 10 a.m. Chris Poget opened the meeting promptly at 10 a.m. Mr. Poget stated that this meeting is being conducted in order to gather public input regarding the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant from 0.78 million gallons per day to 1.56 million gallons per day. Mr. Poget stated that this meeting, along with the last 2 public hearings, was required to inform the public of the potential project and the potential funding from USDA rural development and to gather any comments from the public. He stated that in addition to the expansion of the wastewater plant, the city would be changing the discharge from Polecat Ranch to Long Swamp Creek as part of this project. He stated this change would result in a less restrictive permit and would alleviate the plant having to do temperature control and some of the other really stringent nutrient control of discharge. He stated that the total cost of the expansion was estimated at $7.66 million. He stated that he was anticipating the application to be approved by USDA prior to September 30th of this year. He also stated that the preliminary engineering report as well as the environmental report have been approved at the state level and have been forwarded to the USDA offices in Washington, D.C. for approval because the total estimated cost of the project exceeds the state ceiling of $5 million. He stated that the proposed expansion would add a second aeration tank, a second holding tank, increase the capacity of the chlorine contact chamber and the dechlorination facilities. He stated the expansion also adds 2 more clarifiers and a pump station in order to move the treated water from the existing plant location over to Long Swamp Creek. Mr. Poget opened the floor for public comments, and there were none. Mr. Poget stated that since there were no comments or questions, the meeting was adjourned.
Entertain a motion to approve the public hearing minutes. Pardon? Well, we want to approve them as read so we can enter them into our minutes as an attachment. We can just vote on to enter them into our minutes as an attachment. Can I get a motion?
Make a motion to enter them into our minutes as an attachment.
Second.
I'll second that.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Being all in favor, vote by show of hands. Unanimous. If you would, I think I signed that early. If you would, go ahead and just put your name as the city clerk only. That'd be fine. Does that sound good with you, Bill? I'm trying to act like a lawyer there for a moment. Got over it. Under old business, item A, Peach or Jasper, Gary Hammond rezoning portion of parcel 04105, 015, located on 1317. Yes, ma'am. Pardon? Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Throw a rock next time. I meant to throw that away. Actually, I brought it for a reason. Start again. Old business. That's why I didn't see the public hearing. Old business, subletting, city property update. Mr. Pickett, Mr. Brandon Douglas. That sounds like we're on track.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As you recall from reading the minutes and from previous agendas, the staff had kind of pursued looking at the existing arrangement. I did meet with representatives of JYSA and advised them of the August 5th meeting whereupon it was discussed about the possibility of bringing this, the ball fields up under the umbrella of the city. I advised them that based upon JYSA still being an organization but no longer offering baseball as a recreational component of it, but rather their resource for traveling teams, there had been discussion about creating options on how the mayor and council would like to see this relationship continued. I enumerated for them a few options that are listed in your packet. One of which is option 1 is to keep the current arrangement as is, nothing changes. However, it's been doing normal business as usual. Option 2, keep current arrangement but put in writing by way of agreement and to express expectations that the city attorney and I have discussed, and or how can JYSA still utilize the fields in nearly its current capacity, but within the realm of the city attorney's comfort. Option 3 is to bring it back to the city for arranging the schedules. We would still need to explore some sort of written policy so as to help expectations about what staff is to do in terms of the number of times, any sort of limitations, as well as due to the fact that there has been an existing arrangement in some capacity between the city and JYSA, there is cost incurred of JYSA in terms of some equipment to drag the field and the pinning of the field that they did express to me was essentially sunk costs that the city did not have. And so their desire was, if that was the option the city would pursue, that they would just ask if we were going to go out and prioritize getting equipment to maintain the fields, that we would at least explore the option of looking at the equipment they have. So with that, Mr. Pickett and I spoke again today, and he communicated his concern. I'll let him express it, so I wouldn't put words in his mouth, but it's pretty well consistent with last month's as well.
The same advice I gave you last month,
Well, would you elaborate just a little bit for the public?
Well, what you're asking to be done, as I understand it, is to allow a lease to go into effect to, I guess, go into JYSA, which is a nonprofit corporation, which I've looked that up, and to the exclusion of everybody else, all other taxpayers of the city, all other users, potential users of the facilities, and to the exclusion of them. And I think you do it.
And just for clarification, JYSA was not asking for the city to consider any sort of exclusivity agreement. They were merely wanting just to put the same arrangement on the table. I do agree with Mr. Pickett, and I articulated that to JYSA, that if in fact the city continues a relationship with JYSA and the use of the ball fields, that they would be subject to the fact that it is public property owned by the city of, and therefore the restrictions are, unless they have some sort of standing arrangement, which can be put into writing in terms of expectations, that it's almost like a first right of refusal of persons who show up at the ball field, whether it's a pickup game or otherwise, they would be subjected to that. Additionally, any work, in-kind labor, or any monies that JYSA put into the field, conversely, we would not be in a position to then hold someone to the expectation that, well, they didn't drive the field and they used the field, we had to go and drag the field. So I communicated to them that they would be subjected to the fact that any in-kind labor that they or the coaches or whomever is putting in the field, we would not necessarily hold the general public to that same standard. So in the event, depending on how council would like for staff to move forward, I've at least expressed to them that we can still continue to make something work that's palatable to the citizens, to the community, to the organization. But if we needed to set it out so that there can be clarification that we would not be entering into a lease in so much as a use agreement of sorts. I know the concern, Mayor, is that if JYSA is receiving some sort of monetary donations for the use of the field, how would that be construed? I do not have the answers to that, other than it's being sent to JYSA, and they've admitted that they have received in-kind donations for the use of the field, as well as any sort of monetary contributions for the use.
Well, I was understanding, Mike, that they were leasing the property or renting the property for a set fee. If you had a team, or and I went over a few Saturdays ago, and there was a group out of ball ground using the facility. And but that things that I found out after I realized that I already knew that they weren't having baseball program. They were not having a baseball program as such anymore that we used to support. So my concerns were, and I'll let the council address this, but if they lease our facilities for money, would they not be subject to an audit from the city of Jasper, as we require the Chamber of Commerce that we make donations to the Chamber of Commerce through hotel motel tax? That is money, even though they're charging, using our facilities, but they're making money off our facilities, which are owned by the taxpayers. And I think that's what Bill was addressed, but I'd like to hear what the council feels about this as well, because they get to make a decision.
If I may, Mayor, I see some, looking down the road, I see this becoming even more of an issue. If we have other facilities that we may want to allow the public to use, or entertainment venues, that we would want to somehow have a set scheduling process. I guess we've had a process. I'm wondering now if it's time for a policy where we kind of lay out how we're going to do this, and kind of what the guidelines are. JYSA has a long-standing history in this city, successful history. I hate to see them get edged out, if you will, just because it's time for reevaluation of the process. But I'd like for us to take a look at it, see what we can do, and then even plan down the road a little bit further if there are other types of, I mean, I don't know how Lee Newton, for instance, is scheduled. If we end up having more and more downtown events, you know, how are we gonna do this? So that'd be my suggestion, come up with some sort of policy.
To address that, Councilman Proctor, we, in the past, if people called wanting to use Rover Park when it wasn't scheduled for 4th of July or the Chamber of Commerce, they would get permission from the city, and then they would call at that time the Chamber of Commerce to make sure there was no conflict. And we've even let the chamber schedule it before, but there was never any charge.
Right.
And that's what scares me about the ball fields, that there's a charge to it, and that makes us a total different player. And I'm afraid the lawsuits will follow, because as we sit here, we have electrical facilities, lighting, et cetera, that people just flip the lights on and there could easily be an injury. And so just anyone turns them on. Without JYSA, back in the day, they had ball teams, and they would have scheduled practice and even football practice on the fields at that time. And we were very happy as a city council to allow them to do such. It's that has changed dramatically.
That was what I was just fixing to ask. How has it changed? I mean, I'm like you, I'm just trying to figure this out. How's it changed how it used to be and what we're having the issues with now before?
Okay. JYSA no longer has baseball. We used to go over and volunteer and cook hot dogs, etc., and ball teams would be scheduled and practicing, and that has ceased to exist.
They're only utilizing the fields for practice?
Only utilizing the fields for rentals, to rent to other
It's not for
facilities.
rentals. It's to give places for these kids to have a chance to practice.
I've got checks given to me, at least one check, and supposed to have gotten more, and I didn't pursue it for several reasons, but there's people writing checks, specific amounts of checks to use the ball field.
Did it say rental?
It says rental.
I think that's an opportunity. I know there's some controversy about whether we can even legally rent our facilities, but I think those things need to be explored and we can come up with a policy.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, because we want certain to protect.
If JYSA ever wants to get back in the baseball business, they can come visit Jasper again, because they are called JYSA for a reason, because at the time it was founded by families inside the city and original council members who wanted to have a little special facility, a little bit more at that time than the county offered, and that has changed since 1997, 98, 99, 2000, etc.
So Kim,
Am I correct in that, Mr. Fowles?
It's definitely not being kept up like it used to be.
Well,
And, you know, the thing is, JOSA's done the very best that they could on keeping the fields up, and they've never rented it. I'm sorry, they've never rented it.
can I give that? That's a quote.
That's a quote.
Okay, well, I got checks that were given to JYSA, written to JYSA for the facility. If you want to bring that out, we can discuss that, because there's a fee that's charged to certain ball teams that travel wherever they travel. And they have a right to use the facility if they pay JYSA a certain amount of money. And I can get checks.
I'd like to see them.
Okay, I'll get them for you.
can we move in the direction of having Brandon to pursue, you know, the legalities, how we can protect the city? I mean, I see.
Well, JYSA no longer needs that facility over there because they no longer have baseball.
Yeah, and I'm not saying JYSA, I'm saying, kind of what Sonny was saying, not just talking about JYSA, talking about anybody wanting to use facilities for the city of Jasper. So we're protecting the city.
What we're trying to be here tonight, Brandon gave us 3 possible opportunities, but he can pursue it further. We're in no rush to do this.
Right, okay. I mean, I just think that we need to kind of look at going forward, that if we're looking at Lee Newton Park, we're looking at the downtown, it's time to
All facilities.
But,
Yeah,
John,
all
but
facilities.
John's telling me that he is our appointee, my appointee on the JYSA board, which we had the right to have that appointee. And you tell me you don't know anything about renting the facilities?
Nothing about it.
Okay. I'm just curious about that. With that, Brandon, what would you recommend?
I was writing down, Mayor and Council, what I've heard is, I think what we've communicated from staff to JYSA is pretty well consistent with what's been discussed here. There's a desire that if JYSA in some capacity, whether it's organized or individuals or a team wants to use the field, it wouldn't necessarily preclude.
At no cost.
And part of what I'm getting to is to present you all with some sort of user agreement for City Park, for Lee Newton, for Doris Wigington, for any of our public facilities or spaces that will at least set parameters that we can then enforce and set expectations for any and all parties. Be it organized, on your agenda tonight, there's a few of the organized type entities that are using Lee Newton and otherwise. So that's kind of what I've heard tonight is kind of some variation of these options is to present y'all with a user agreement in concert with Mr. Pickett to try to achieve. I mean, there's nothing that if we did nothing absolutely right now, someone could go use the public field right now with no restrictions because it's public space.
First come, first served basis.
And if someone from JLSA, and this is what I said, if someone from JLSA said, hey, someone went out there and they tore up the mound, I said, we would have an issue in so much as I don't have certain equipment, so I would have to rely on a continued partnership with JYSA. So all this, I think, can be enumerated in some user agreement to where we just set expectations about everything, dragging the field, et cetera, because that is where I have to be upfront that we do not possess certain equipment that is needed for a ball field.
And I think we also need to explore the possibility of renting our facilities. And the reason I say that, if we are going to open this up to, and I'm not suggesting we do this, but if we do open it up to people who are not our citizens, and granted there's a certain degree of responsibility we have to provide a place for our citizens to recreate, but if it's from people from who are traveling, I think there potentially could be an opportunity, a form of tourism, to have tournaments come here and have people pay to play, so to speak. And if that does increase our liability, then we need to look at the cost of that, of how that would impact us, and take that into consideration. Again, looking forward for what might yet to become coming here. And then the other thing that you and I have talked on briefly in conversations is a dedicated person to help service these areas and keep them nice, including dragging the field and so forth and so on. And that would take into account the equipment that we may need. So.
But evidently no one now is leasing our fields. Is that correct? Did JYSA give you any direction on that?
The only thing that was communicated was that JYSA had received in-kind labor and monetary donations to their organization.
The monetary donation would be a specific amount. If you
Yes.
don't, if you don't renew and pay a certain amount, you can't use the facility.
I don't know the terms because
That's not rent to me.
I wanted to come to y'all with the information.
Okay. Just, I think you need to get off the rental block, and that's my recommendation. And anyone here at the city could easily schedule those fields. Now, if JYSA wants to start a baseball program, they can come back to this council, explain what they want to do. But without a baseball program themselves, they're out of business. They don't use the facilities for football practice any longer. I understand they're turning the football program over to the county, school
They're
system.
still involved with it, but county,
The school system.
yeah, they're involved with the school system.
Okay. So, and also wrestling is that way as well?
It's also along with everything too.
So,
It's not with the city.
what is JYSA in charge of now?
Well, they still do all the scheduling and stuff with the cheerleading, they do the wrestling, they still do the football, but they're on the board. It's a big board. They're all-
Basically falling under the Pickett County School Board of Education. Okay, so it's different, totally different than it was just a few years ago. Well, I guess we can table it again. You can keep this council be willing to listen to you. I'll get you a copy of the check, John.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You asked him if he had direction for, we are gonna listen to him again, but he should be bringing us some information.
Well, he brought us 3 opportunities here, but I don't think either one of them fits what ultimately needs to be done.
Right.
And I think basically the #1 coverage would be the city of Jasper. And before we could, if a child were to be injured, a ball player were to be injured over there, at least we tried to have good intent. It's free. We're trying to provide services for the student, for the children. But without that, we lose that. And so if there's fees being charged for profit for JYSA, for lack of a better way of putting it.
No, I would think it would be profit for the city of Jasper.
Well, that would have been, at least we could pay for our insurance.
Right.
So that'll be before you in the months to come, guys. Thank you, Brandon, for that. Bill. Item B, service delivery area map amendment.
Yes, sir. As you recall, and Mayor, as you stated, there is specific.
Well, before we go, can I get a motion to table this?
I'll make a motion that we table it.
Motion to table,
Second.
motion second, discussion. Then all in favor, with show of hands. Let's see it again. Service delivery area, item B, map amendment.
Yes, sir. In your package, you've got something to look at. Most likely, Mayor, you may want to call for a table. I did speak with John West, emailed him. We're waiting for a map, or DCA.
John West, I think,
Yes,
who is this guy?
Waiting for a map to be developed. Essentially, it's going to be the same map that you all have seen in terms of the map amendment. Regional Commission, which produced all of our maps for the comp plan for the service delivery update 18. They're going to amend the map. Basically, before you have Form 1, 2, and 4, just for your review. Nothing to do at this time. That's just the forms that the mayor mentioned last month that you're required to submit. Procedurally, once we get the map back from the Regional Commission, there's a 30-day mandatory review through DCA, whereupon they'll basically say, yes, you've completed Forms 1, 2, and 4, and the map, and then at that moment, Mayor, the city and the county can formalize the agreement as been presented and sign off on it.
I've not seen exactly the map. I'm looking at a map you have here of the service delivery area.
Yes.
And sometime between now and then for the council information and the public information as well, part of the green area over in the west part of the water system, where we have no services at this time, nor does the county, and the county wishes to pursue that area for service, and I don't think anyone has a problem with that. And this map was not drawn to totally prohibit any development from either the county or the city. If we could provide it, we would be pursuing it. And that's the way it's been in the past. We just never had a desire to go in that area. So what we're looking at, for the record, again, if I might explain it to the public, and I see Mr. Copeland here, we're basically trading what is already ours. The county said they would be willing to give that to us, and that's nice of them to say that they're willing to give that to us, but we don't have to have their permission. Just for the record, I believe the law indicates that if it's inside the corporate limits and this property is inside the corporate limits, we can provide service. But for the blessing, to satisfy the county commission, we put that in the wording of it. We're basically going to provide water and sewer in the city of Jasper on what we're going to refer to as the Copeland property near Diamond Mill by our rights. We don't want, but in good, I think, so that we can have good relations. But good relations, sometimes you need to clarify. We're donating what is inside the city of Jasper's green area on this map because they can provide a service there, and we could, but we wouldn't be profitable for us at all. But we're giving them that because they're asking for it, and hope to have good relations. We're doing that. That's the way it's going to need to be worded. We're not trading, and somebody needs to tell the commissioner that. We're glad he's recognizing that's our property, and we'll recognize and be happy to give him what he can provide service for. Could you clarify that for the commissioner, or do you need me to?
In terms of?
Just clarify for him, because he's wanting to trade, and we're not trading. We're giving property, and we're taking what is already ours, and he needs to recognize that, and they need to recognize that. That's all I'm trying to clarify, and it needs to be for the record. And you're going to need that when you deal with DCA. Correct?
They said as long as the city has approved at the July 1 meeting, record of the map amendment.
Okay, we're going to prove the total fabrication then. We're taking what there and we're giving them the other. Because the commissioner asked for it. So he come and said, I'd like to have that. You're not providing service there. Would the council give it to me? We said, sure. But let us take what is inside the corporate limits of Jasper, just for the record, and we'll move on because that's DCA regulations. It's state law. Am I right?
I've just said a map amendment. In terms of, I'm not.
No,
I'm not an elected
I feel like we're
official.
being held hostage, and we didn't have to be held hostage. Just county, you would like to have this, ask for it. I'm sure the council would give it to you. But we would like to recognize that it's their property. We'd like for you to recognize that it's ours and say it is, and we'll provide services there, and we'll deal with you on buying water from you if we need to, selling water to you if we need to, etc., like we always have done. That just needs to be clarified. And I think in my roundabout way, I just clarified it. Mr. Pickett, you agree with that?
I do.
Do you want to read DCA rules and regulations first?
No, I do, because whatever's in the city is ours anyway.
Correct. But
That's a given.
correct, and that service delivery area, if the county provides water and sewer there, they need to provide it for those people there if they can, and we don't need to be a hindrance to that. And that's the way it should have been worded, and the request would have been worded, and we would have probably 99.9% said yes, and I would have been much in favor of it.
But they haven't requested it yet.
No, well, they did.
Okay.
If we would give, if we gave them that, they would give us this.
Yeah.
And all they had to say was, we provide water and sewer, water there. Would you mind if we did that? And that would have been the proper question. And I think for the record down the road, it needs to be stated as such somewhere. And I'm sure Lisa's writing down about every word we're saying because you're going to get off video. But that, now you may finish your statements if you have one that would satisfy the DCA.
Yeah, until I can get the actual map that's going to be produced by the regional commission to then essentially take what was looked at on the sketch conceptually by the county and the city, then that would accompany forms 1, 2, and 4, and then submit it to DCA for their 30-day review.
Right.
And then it's just amended accordingly.
And truly, this map does show that the lower part of the city of Jasper that we annexed years ago is in the county service delivery area. But once they agreed to let us annex it, which they did, it became our responsibility to provide water and sewer there if we can, or contract with some other party to do so. For the record. Didn't want to say that all month. Thank you. Go ahead, Brandon.
That's it.
Okay. Council, questions on this? I believe it's moving forward with the proper channels and it needs to be noted. Mr. Copeland, is that why you came tonight? Is there another issue on your,
I just got to listen.
to that one? Okay. No action needs to be taken at this time on the service delivery. We'll leave that as old business. We'll entertain a motion to table this because Brandon will bring this before you with a map in the near future, correct? Revised map,
Yes.
DCA gets it already?
Well, the regional commission's going to.
They have to draw it up,
Yes, sir.
but the DCA's got to approve it.
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we table it until we get the map.
Okay. Second. Motion second, discussion. Being none, all in favor, vote by show of hands. That's unanimous, thank you. Item C, Mountain Business Park zoning, Brandon Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I think Mr. Delbeck is in attendance, and he and I have met to discuss of a issue that he had raised, and then we subsequently kind of reviewed. And without getting into all the unnecessary C2 versus M1 zoning issues, staff has addressed with Mr. Delbeck I think, palatable action that could be taken to resolve the issue as it comes to one use, which is essentially the manufacturing of raw goods, which is not allowed in the C2, which is what is in effect happening on about 3 or 5 businesses in the park. And it provides a little bit of I guess, clarification moving forward with any additional properties that Mr. Delbeck or others own or use, that would be a permissible use through a mechanism known as the special land use permit. What would happen is you've got a use by right, which zoning is, you have this zoning designation, and incorporated in that zoning designation is all the itemized uses. If something is not specifically pointed out, you try to hit what the intent was in the particular use. In the case of Mountain Business Park, there was the one use of manufacturing establishments involving the mechanical or chemical conversion of raw materials into semi-finished or finished products. So rather than incorporating that into the C2 district, which Mr. Delbeck stated, and I don't want to speak for him, but in our meeting, he was not necessarily warm to the idea of taking it out of or leaving it in industrial and also allowing it to be a use by right. There's something called the special land use permit that enables a community to look at individual cases. My experience with this is that someone comes in with a piece of property that they own or they're purchasing, and they say, well, I want to use this because my neighbor is doing this, and it's a comparable use, but it may not be the exact use, and because there are so many similarities between the C2 district and the M1 district, the more immediate solution is to allow a special land use permit, rather than trying to rewrite an entire new zoning code and then go through and rezone each and every property, which is not needed because there are properties already in compliance with the C2 use. So just look at the uses, properties that the uses are out of compliance with C2, and you can identify them as a special land use permit. So then that property is an SLUP.
Okay.
So that's essentially a long way of saying that that's a viable solution.
Okay, the property originally was built and called a business park, and it was going to be for manufacturing, was the major intent of it. And then we found a lot of commercial coming in and asking for building permits, business licenses, etc. We allowed that over the years to take place. And I believe when I call Mr. Delbeck, he's going to explain to us where the banking industry don't like to look at it that way. They like, well, I'll let Mr. Delbeck explain.
Well, the solution Brandon's come up with will work for me to get started on construction of the 2 new buildings that I want to start. But Mr. Mayor's correct. Even when I spoke to Mark Mitnick in that community bank in Pickett County, he had no idea that wasn't zoned industrial or manufacturing. And they do frown on that. I so far have only spoke to 5 business owners or property owners in there other than myself, because I didn't want to make a big issue and everybody clamoring about it. My main objective is just to know what I'm getting ready to build are going to be buildings that look just like the other buildings that are there, that are most likely going to occupy businesses that work in the same as what we already have. one thing, Brandon, I didn't hear you say was distribution, which is also in M1 that's not in C2. There's a good bit of distribution in there. And I've not done an exact count. Me and Brandon did sit down, and there's a lot of businesses. I think there's 3 cabinet shops in there. Is that manufacturing? You know, it's not C2. There's a lot of businesses that are doing some level of manufacturing.
We have the garment industry there.
We got the garment industry. You had Top Gun, and that's been replaced. They're doing the same thing. They've been replaced with Onyx. There's several others.
And to get to your point is, it's not going to be an issue until some bank says, how are you zoned? And now that you told Mr. Mitten, it's going to be an issue.
It could be an issue another way too. I mean, if a property owner, such as myself, I own 8 in there and I'm getting ready to have a tenant change, if I'm marketing that, which I am already on LoopNet, as an industrial property, because that's how you would market it. You don't market it as office space. Because they're 5,000 plus square foot warehouses. What else would what else would you call it? So when you go to market that and you bring a tenant in, and then you're just hoping when they go to the city and say, we assemble this or we manufacture that, it's according to how strict the city wants to be in following their C2 or M1 guidelines. And you'd have to just go down the street and look and see, we'll just take Onyx for instance, is that manufacturing from raw steel, raw aluminum, powder coating, welding? That's manufacturing. I think they occupy 4 buildings in there. One of my tenants, being my son that does distribution, that's all he does. He just distributes medical equipment. It's not allowed in C2. The other tenant, Revelation Air, manufacturing the kit planes, not allowed.
We're in C2 building though.
So,
Zone.
you know, if it's a stopgap measure, because I've held off on having Russell Howard go further with the engineering of the 2 buildings I want to put up, and I'm not putting them up for anyone in particular, I don't have them leased. I need at least some assurance that the businesses that are allowed to go in there will match what's already in there. Manufacturing, distribution, there's very few retail in there.
But, and just to clarify for everyone in attendance, Mayor and the council, what Mr. Dilbeck and I spoke of is specifically when you look at the zoning district side by side, the manufacturing establishments involving only the assembly of pre-manufactured component parts is a C2 use by right and an M1 use by right. The manufacturing establishments involving the mechanical or chemical conversion of raw materials into semi-finished or finished product is only a use by right under the M1. So when you're going through the black and white code of the zoning districts, Mr. Delbeck and I both conclude that when you do have different people looking at different uses within a zoning district, it is subjected to interpretation, and or if you're not really looking at the property or the surrounding area, you may be inclined to take a literal approach and say, well, in your business license application, you have declared your use of X to X. That's an M1 use, you're a C2 zoning, you're out of compliance. If you're merely on your business license declaring manufacturing, and if someone's familiar with the business park and they know that that's in keeping or consistent with the surrounding uses of the businesses, they're more inclined to look at that as a compliant business or use, and it doesn't elevate itself to a rezoning status. So this is where an overall need for the zoning code to be looked at is something that I'd like to prioritize, but in the immediacy, rather than to put off Mr. Dilbeck, we kind of concluded a situation that I've got experience with when a lender or a site selector or whomever else calls for zoning verification. they call up, they say, well, what's permitted, what's not, what's used by right, what's conditional. In some jurisdictions, you have the SLUP, the special land use permit, that they did say, okay, well, fair enough.
Let me ask you this, what if you were to run into a situation where you couldn't comply with the request of the property owner because of the business that they wanted to put there? What would you tell them?
If someone makes application, if there's an existing business building on a parcel, and someone comes in to fill out a business license application, and they declare a use that is then flagged because maybe it stands out, it's not a C2 use, then you tell the applicant they need to go through the rezoning process. Typically, in contracts in the due diligence period, there's about a 90-day period that an interested
Basically,
party.
if you don't like what they're putting there, or you got a specific guideline that you can show this potential
And
business
typically,
that they're not going to get there.
typically a staff would be trained to say, hey, what type of manufacturing is this? Because if a business were to just go in and put manufacturing as their use, that could be interpreted as a C2 or an M1. And so you would hope that the person would dig a little deeper and say, what kind of manufacturing? Are you doing raw material into finished, or are you taking pre-assembly stuff and finishing it?
I don't know of anybody in that complex that's assembling anything that's not raw materials.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Yes.
make some comments? I don't know why we would have codes and ordinances if we're not gonna follow them. And I'm sorry, I'm a black and white guy, Brandon, you're learning, but it's black and white that those are C2. And I don't know why other things are being done, and ultimately, that's something we're gonna have to address. But I'm sworn to uphold the law, and as far as I'm concerned, according to the Supreme Court, codes and ordinances are law. And so I don't understand exactly why we're having this discussion about we've screwed up, or possibly screwed up, over the last period where we were allowing good businesses doing good work to operate where they shouldn't be operating. And I know that that's a problem, and it's a bigger problem if we continue to be complicit and perpetuate it, because what's to stop that same business owner from saying, well, I'm gonna change what I'm doing in here and I'm gonna do something else. And it could be something that's one step less desirable for our community. Now I know how some other communities are addressing this. They're finding areas where there's property available that they can use for this purpose, that whether it be manufacturing or whatever it is, and they're doing land swaps. They're saying, okay, we'll let you move over here and we'll help you do that, but this is C2. I can tell you, I have a direct personal experience with Mincy Marble in Hall County that was grandfathered in a residential area, and Hall County, I mean, a very valuable piece of property. They wanted to double the size of their business. County Commission supported it. Environmentally, they couldn't do it based on the protect the river people at Lake Lanier. Well, they're moving Mincy Marble over to their, what was at one point in time an empty industrial park. So, I'm sorry, we want to accommodate you, Brad, we really do. And we also want to accommodate these successful businesses that have been doing good work over there. And I don't know how we wade through that, and whether when they apply for their new license, then they,
So if I'm hearing you right, you've got 38 different businesses in there that you want probably 30 to 40% of those to move out?
Well,
I
it
do
look
my
like,
best.
but there's 5 in there that's going.
I'm not, no, I'm talking about our code over there, our zoning over there is C2.
Yeah, no, it's current.
Right.
Yeah.
And just because we've been complicit and let other businesses come in there, and I don't know anything about those facts. Somebody does. Somebody knows why there's manufacturing where C2 is. And if it was intended to be manufacturing, it should have not been made C2. And we, I think the city will take some sort of responsibility for that as we make the adjustments. So.
Yeah, you look inquisitive, right?
I'm just perplexed.
So you don't think we should, so those, you're a property owner over there, and from my perspective, and it could be the wrong perspective, I've been accused for saying what I'm getting ready to say.
Yeah.
But I think those codes and ordinances are there to protect you. They're to protect you from something going into a business next to yours that's not supposed to be there. And just because you say that's okay, to me, that's not that's okay for you to say that, but I'm not sure it's okay for a
I'm just trying to wrap my mind around how you would actually fix all of the businesses that are in there that are manufacturing, not assembling, but manufacturing and/or distribution. That's going to affect a lot of businesses.
I understand it is, and it shouldn't have been allowed, but it was. And we're gonna have to fix it, and we're gonna have to do it legally, and we're gonna have to do it in a way that prevents.
A little history on that was built, and it was built as a business park.
Yeah.
And so that was the definition of it. And it was a kind of a broad stroke as far as the zoning was concerned. And the developer came into the building department, and on his plan, or their plan, put C2. Because that was the best use that they could think of at that particular time. They just didn't want M1. It was, you could see 515 from it.
Right.
And evidently they told the department down there that they wanted C2. And then right behind that, when no one looked into what it was, when you came in and wanted to build, what's the name of the garment industry?
Daystar.
Daystar. We were very excited to get 100 employees a job in Jasper at the time, and Daystar wanted that property. And it was not looked at that they could not build that in C2. And that's evidently what happened at that particular time. And it goes back several years. But Dr. Proctor is correct, though, when you start changing. But we have a situation here where we could very well do a dual operation together, which is what we're trying to look at. But it is going to open a can of worms that we're going to have to deal with. But this property is very specific, and we got mixed use of commercial, and a lot less commercial, I think, than we have. Because I actually, one time, I looked down upon the possibility of a tire store opening in that area, because it was going to create traffic flow that was going to not work well with industrial. And so I was a little confused at that particular time that commercial was the dominant zoning.
Well, I
But
think
it's something
with
this council is going to have to deal with.
well, it's something with the city only having 2 commercial zoning classifications. You've got the M1 and the C2 that would have to apply. I mean, my personal feeling, I appreciate you voicing yours, my personal feeling is this falls somewhere in the middle of those. You know, in the past, you've not wanted true commercial with all that retail traffic going in, which
You
is
don't
what
have a restaurant down there. You can put a restaurant down there if you want it.
in C2, yeah. Put fast food down there if you want.
Wouldn't be profitable, but if you could.
So what is the solution that y'all came to, Brandon? You said you were in agreement?
I had told him in the immediacy, and when I say immediacy, in terms of more expeditiously than creating an entirely new zoning district, because that can take a little bit of time. The special land use permit is a one-page document that you have. It can be incorporated into the zoning ordinance. At that moment, it's part of the zoning ordinance, and then persons can apply for a special land use permit, which basically is almost like a conditional land use permit. It's all words and it's all zoning and use by right, conditional use, or special use. So this is just another tool that you can incorporate to your zoning that Mr. Dilbeck or others could then look and say, I've got this parcel that I want to build this building. I don't necessarily know what it's going to be, but if it allows me to do a comparable use next door to the, I forgot the name of the plane. Revelation, then it could be presented to council for their discretion of issuing a special land use permit for that.
and gives council control over the
Of the
future of
use,
that
yes.
development, the entire property.
So the zoning, if you wanted to say it's an overlay, it's not really, but if you wanted to picture it, you still maintain your C2 zoning designation. That if you want to go through a more thorough analysis of if you change some of the zoning districts, maybe this Mountain City Business Park is a candidate for an entirely new zoning district that closer resembles the uses or the intent within.
Does a special land use have to go through planning and zoning each time it's done, or is that something that goes straight to council?
I think it comes straight to council. I can seek 100% clarification. I know if you're incorporating something into your zoning your zoning ordinance, you run it through your zoning board for approval. Planning commission. Then your council would have the requisite 2 hearings for the ordinance. But with the way that we've done special land use permits in the past, that would be council decision. So it wouldn't be a rezoning, so it doesn't require going through the rezoning type process, but because it's a special use granted by council, it goes directly. So you are shaving a step out because you're not changing the zoning district.
And you said we've done it in the past, you mean you
I'm
have
sorry,
experience?
I've
Okay.
experienced in the past in terms of my former employment. Yes, sir.
So we have, do you have this special land use permit?
Yes, sir. In your packet,
Do we have it?
it's the one page. It's pretty basic in terms of you could take a particular use, such as what Mr. Delbeck stated, and in one column, you itemize the use and then the requisite zoning district. So in some jurisdictions, all of your zoning districts are eligible for some type of special land use. You can see in here, extended stay facilities. I've eliminated the zoning districts, but Mr. Dilbeck's got some experience in Ackworth. Extended stays were not a use by right, but you could apply for a special land use permit in a C2, an LI, HI, and then that way the council could then determine if the intent was to use your property in this manner as it's currently being done.
If the property sold, does this go for sale, or is this something the new owner would have to do, or?
If the use changes, then I think the special land use goes away. I don't know. I'm probably not qualified to answer it right now. But the zoning supersedes, so the zoning stays C2.
Well, I was just asking, how many do we think is out of compliance with all this that's coming together? And what we have them, as a C2, what is not in compliance of there? How many would you say out of, however many there is there? Is it the ones in red that you got on your list?
I know there's a welding, or there's a machine shop over there.
Machine shop still there, the blasting company.
The cabinet, there was 3 or 4 cabinets.
Yeah, there's a.
And then there was the,
Kitchen and Tour originated out of that business park.
and part of it, Councilmember Snavy, you've got a situation too to where if in fact a particular use, whether declared or not declared on a business license or otherwise, if it's not specifically called out, there again, it comes into the interpretation of whomever's approving at the time. So you cannot always itemize every single use that may happen. And so you have this thing that just happens over time that if it's not just in the chart, and someone's referencing, well, they do the best they can of saying, well, hey, it's C2, there you go.
So you need an action from us to get it before planning and zoning, or?
If the council would like for me to incorporate this into the ordinance, I think there's an expectation that that will then at least allow Mr. Dilbeck some idea of council's receptiveness to incorporate the special land use permit into the zoning ordinance. It does not provide him 100% assurances that one will be provided to him, but it certainly is another tool that is being inserted into the zoning ordinance that he could then pursue for his property.
Is this property you want to build on? Is that,
Yeah, I've got 4 buildings in there and then 4 vacant lots. And I've held up building on those lots because after this come to my attention that they're zone C2 and some of my already current tenants in there, the way I read it, technically wouldn't be allowed to be in there in C2. Even my own son's medical equipment company, distributing medical equipment, C2, am I right, doesn't allow any distribution.
We can have the US mail
No.
in the C2.
And that's one of those, I don't know if it's clearly articulated in the use category of permitted or conditional use.
The only place I read it was under M1 where it mentions you can do distribution.
My concern is giving the council the decision-making process as to what you can and can't put there. And that's where you're gonna find yourself in legal question in the future, where when you have an undesirable business and you tell it, no, you don't want. And then that's when judge and jury gets involved and we have to hire lawyers, et cetera. That's what's coming at us if we.
But it's still in C2 though.
Pardon?
The law would fall to C2, and so you would have told him he can't do it unless it's C2.
But we totally limit a property that we intended to be much like it is. Our biggest issue, and we've been skating around it, is adult entertainment. And maybe something that would have some type of environmental question that we might have a concern with. But adult entertainment would be our biggest issue if we labeled this as industrial property. And going back on it, might have been some of the concern we had when we thought about this property being industrial, because if you wanted to place Bill explained to you that adult entertainment has the right to be here. We have the right to zone, and we choose to zone it in the industrial property. And that's my biggest concern with the property becoming industrial, that it would be prime location for adult entertainment in the future.
Mine too, and there's some other things that are allowed in M1 that I don't think any of us would want in there.
And that's why we might get a special zoning.
I'm a simpler guy. Brandon's got this more in depth, but my idea was the ideal situation for that business park would be to have an LI, something in between a light industrial, not allowing
That's what
everything
we've
that's
been
in
asking
M1.
for, kind of.
but I think we gotta move with that in the respect of the legalities of all that and trying to, because you're not gonna, if you were a fabric place, you certainly wouldn't want a combustible place next to you. So when you start combining some of that, you're asking for your own havoc. And I think Sonny was right on trying to protect our citizens, trying to protect the city. I think we need to move where in the future we've got some definite guidelines and we're not just somebody saying, as the mayor said,
Yeah, but if I
pick it or
understood
choose
Sonny,
it.
but if I understood Sonny correctly, if I understood him correctly, would be going to, in my opinion, 10 or 12 tenants that don't comply, not 5, at least 10 or 12, and saying, you can't be here.
No, that's not what let me clarify. I don't know what we need to do with those that have been allowed to do this, and demonstrate that they can, have a good business, even though they're legally not supposed to be there. I'm not trying to address that tonight, but I do think it's part of the problem. And I want to prevent whatever we do tonight. I want to make sure that in the future, there's some sort of accountability. And whether we go back and And maybe my question about the planning and zoning, having to go through planning and zoning, if we have a way that the next time their license comes around, they can apply for what they've been doing. There's some exposure there, I understand, for them that may make them uneasy, but ultimately that could also solidify their position. So, does that make sense? But tonight, it's a big problem. And I don't know what we're gonna do about it, but tonight I'm trying to keep it from happening in the future.
How many vacancies do we have in those?
There's only one building for sale that's currently under contract, so it's vacant. So really, I guess you'd say it's one. Out of
So
38.
if we have a successful park,
But I'm
whatever,
trying to add 4
we
more.
have a successful park there with a lot of employees in that area, so we really have no reason to feel bad about Mountain City Business Park.
No one's complaining about this, the atmosphere.
But we need
It's just not legal.
to call pot a pot. And what it is it's a smorgasbord of people who employ people. And so I think we need to address that, and Brandon's can solve part of our problem with special use.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, you currently have M1 adult business acid manufacturer, 2 uses as conditional uses in the M1. That's the only, there is no use by right. And so what Mr. Dilbeck and I had talked about originally was, do we want to incorporate these type of uses manufactured as a conditional use? The issue then is you are now at that moment blanketing that particular use as a conditional use in any C2. So any C2 throughout the community, which is why we did not lead in with that. The special land use is a special request, a special permit. So there are many different options when you get into zoning. It's very complex. It is not always solved overnight. But I think this is a good start.
And we can satisfy the bank and the real estate concerns of the property.
If someone calls me in 6 months and says, do we have a special land use permit that's allowed, is it kind of then yes, if it's been incorporated in our zoning. Currently, we do not. So it's pretty well,
Will that open you up in the future, though, speaking legality-wise, if we give it a special, because you're building, you don't know what's going in there.
Right.
Right? Give this, you set this out, is that going to come back and say later on, well, you did this here? What we're trying to get is some consistency, I'm like Mayor Weaver, I don't, not saying we don't want to do this, we want to try to work through this,
Yeah.
but we want to work through it legally. We want to do what's right and what is best try to do what's best for everybody. Can't change what's happened in the past. What we can do is try to move forward with the best way we can.
Let me feed off this just for a moment. What we could do, and it's something that's going to be a few readings of the council, but we need to identify what Mountain City Business Park is and label it and allow them to pursue certain retail businesses as well as certain industrial businesses. And then your council will be covered from henceforth. But that's something that needs to be done with this council so that we can identify what we have there, because we sure don't want it to go away. It's too valuable to the city and the county. So I think we can identify it very quickly with the businesses in place, the potential businesses in M1. And this will have a light commercial and industrial. We might want to leave industrial kind of marginal because we're trying to protect that area. Obviously, if we don't get in trouble with Constitution here, we want it for job production.
So what are we gonna do with the next time it comes up? Are we gonna do a special?
No, this will be labeled once we get it
Just
labeled.
for this area though?
This area.
It crops up another.
It could happen again. These businesses work well together, do they not?
I'm not talking about this one, I'm talking about if some other place that's zoned all C2 starts deciding that they wanna do it differently, and then we say, well, no, we're not gonna let you do it.
Well, you would have to explain why. But right now, I think we got a situation that needs to be corrected, and it'd be easier enough to correct, labeling these businesses that's in this geographic area, and let them exist. Don't tell Daystar that they have to move out. I know you're not saying that, but that's what we don't want to project.
Bill, in your opinion, for future reference, like you just said, what, can you give us some legal advice on that?
Would you let the dog out, the tail follows it?
The dog, the tail, the head's out. We got the Daystar right next to, what is a commercial property over there that's specific? Give me a specific commercial property. I always thought there was a heck of a lot more
Well, I
industrial.
mean, Goss Tractor would be commercial.
But they have a garage, and
They have a
do.
garage, and then you'd have Tater Patch Players. But you know what I was thinking about? That is in no way industrial or anything close to it, a theater. But if it ever comes a time that they choose not to exist any longer, that's a 10,000 square foot building.
Right.
What's it going to be then? It's from what's in there already, the demographics of what's in there already, it probably wouldn't be
Well,
another
that was
theater.
the last resort. Tater Patch chose that property.
Right.
And they were allowed to go there because they couldn't find another building.
More automotive, you might consider retail.
It's something that we could address so that you can make a loan on your property and sell the property if we had the proper zoning for it.
Brandon, in your experience, is the land use permit ordinance something we want in our
Regardless of if this issue were to be brought up, if we were doing a zoning ordinance review, I'd want to incorporate this as another tool. So separating a little bit from the immediate discussion, all I'm asking is if you want to incorporate this into your zoning ordinance, we can move forward with advertising and getting this before the Planning and Zoning Commission for their incorporation, going through a zoning ordinance, 2 readings with the city, and then it's on the books. And then if a business wants to seek out a special land use permit, they can do so. That's what I'm interested in. In your packet, it does have the listed occupants. The red, I'm not 100% certain, Ms. Ann, exactly what that is, other than you'll see in there some of the type of uses. And zoning is a complex issue. I don't have all the answers. I can try to find certain tools to help. I'm not sure, I'm not qualified to speak on any legalities, other than I have expressed to Mr. Dillbeck that I think this council is interested in relational opportunities. We're not trying to in any way dissuade the existing businesses in there. The problem's been identified, and until we can kind of create a long-term solution, the immediacy is what's being presented tonight in the form of that SLUP. Not to say that it's a rubber stamp that it's going to happen with these particular businesses or properties, but it's incorporating a tool. Because, Mayor, to your point, creating an entire new zoning district is something that, as candidly, is not my forte, because then you have to essentially look at what precedents there are, how does this feed into others, the overlapping of the C2 to the M1, conditional use by right. So
Could we grandfather the ones that are in there, leaving it as a C2?
if you rezone properties, every single property has to be rezoned. A special land use permit, if identified through this measure, and I can clarify this, does not go through a rezoning process. It's a land use permit granted by the council. So it's a little less intensive in terms of grandfathering and otherwise. I don't know long-term implications. If he were to sell a business and the use does not, it's just ownership, then no effect, no change. Because a business license would essentially come through just a different owner. the use would trigger a change.
What's path forward?
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to ask staff to incorporate the special land use permit into our ordinances or codes.
Motion to, say it one more time for the record.
To have staff incorporate special land use permit into our zoning.
Need a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Anyone, you want to say something? Being none, all in favor, vote by show of hands. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Will that help you with your loans and whatever?
I think it does. I would like the council to continue to look at the zoning for that.
They will, I'm sure.
And not just go by what people declared when they fill out their business license, but to actually drive by and look and see, does that look like manufacturing? Does that look like, that's,
Well,
I do think there is definitely a call.
This is the first time I've ever had a problem with Mountain City Business Park. I've always been proud of it, and
Yeah.
it's become a burden.
no, I think it's great to be proud of it, but we need some clarification.
Yes, I understand.
In case
Well,
people change, time change, tenants change.
Like I said before, I've changed one particular house on West Church Street from residential, commercial, central business district. Back, spot zoned it for going from a hairdresser to a home, back to a hairdresser,
Yo-yo.
cosmetologist, just to satisfy the bank. We weren't worried about the zoning as much as the bank was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you're gonna run into your issues.
All right.
Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Now we get to something easy. Stormwater, Connell Street. Brandon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's two significant updates, one in which Elizabeth Street scheduled to have taps put in the water line, culvert and pipe. Elizabeth hopefully will be set by end of week, first of next week, to bring that project to finality. Connell Street, Mr. New and I spoke earlier today. I dropped by just to let him know what I had anticipated on at least updating or proposing. I told him that I did not have immediate clarification on the document he provided last month. I said Mr. Pickett may have something that he'd like to comment on in regards to that easement he presented. But in your package, you should have an aerial image of what appears to be some sort of rights of way of the city or an easement that's placed in our name. Lonnie, Adam, and I went out and walked the property a few weeks back, and it does appear as though that there is a significant area that happens to be coming off of Dogwood and some other properties that when it gets into what would be considered, I guess, our easement area or our road bed or trail or whatever you want to say, that's within our purview of doing something, we could essentially redirect some of that water and channel it farther down the easement or road area, berming it up a little bit to try to mitigate excess water from running through the rear properties of Mr. Leary and his neighbors. That's something that's well within our control, at least through the aerial GIS data we have. It's just a matter of scheduling, coordinating staff's time. But I don't know if Mr. Pickett, if you'd like to comment on the easement that Mr. New presented, if that provides us with an opportunity that we need to or want to address any of the inlets.
Bill, the easement is the old layout of the city, isn't it? One of the streets that.
I'm not sure about that.
I believe it is.
I'm not sure, but I know that both sides of the road, behind where the existing houses are, there were roads laid out in the original map that were never developed.
Right. We've given several of those away over the years.
That starts all the way from the stop sign up here at the, well, actually, it goes all the way through town, all the way through town. You know, for instance, there was just take one block from where the remodeled Chapman House is down to the next street. Richard Street. There was a road to divide those lots in two. So there was one on each side of the road, and back 40 years ago, or maybe even longer than that, the city had no use and they didn't want to develop it. So they deeded to each property owner half of the street. And they did that on both sides of the street, and in fact down behind Dr. Proctor's house, that actually road was developed. Cold Street. And, but that Cold Street, it stops. It didn't go all the way through the block, what I call a block. Yeah. And just like the property that I used to own, where my dad grew up, where ETC building is, there was a street that cut those lots in two. And actually, behind Woodbridge Inn, same problem. Not a problem, but same success facts. And I haven't looked at that, but I mean, the easement's valid.
Right.
The stormwater, the easement's valid.
I just want to clarify where that came from. I've seen it
And
right
I
now.
can't speak to the issue of, the issue was brought up with me that Brandon mentioned to me was, well, we didn't accept it. There's nothing to say we didn't sign it. Well, an easement doesn't have to be signed by the grantee, just by the grantor. And there should have been some action though, somewhere in the minutes to accept that, because it's a recorded plat and been recorded for years.
But Brandon's basically the argument is that we have a right to be there. And that means
Absolutely you do.
we won't have some party filing suit if water gets dumped on them.
No, that's already in the.
Let's try and take it off of someone else.
Those conveyances are subject to that easement.
So, Brandon, what's your question?
The two questions, one is the action I think staff's prepared to take on the old easement, roadbed, whatever, behind some of the Connell properties, doing some of that work that's within our purview. The other question, I just wanted to seek clarification, if I heard Mr. Pickett correctly, the easement that Mr. New presented last month as pertaining to the sanitary, or not the stormwater line that essentially runs through the grate out to the drop inlet and behind his, if that's been conveyed to us, then what Mr. New and I had spoken about was that really in my evaluation, his evaluation, it looks like we would just need authorization from council for us to look at putting some pedestals on the grates. There's 2 grates that are in question. It's a pretty, when I say inexpensive, relative to trying to go through and re-engineer, resize pipe. And I don't think it's anything more than if we purchase a couple of pedestals and put on the grates, because the grate is just at grade. So at times, if it were to get covered up or things get in it, it can cause runoff to then fill up and sheets go elsewhere. So if you put a pedestal on top of the grates, that would at least mitigate some of the debris and other stuff from clogging it up.
You have a price on that?
I do not. I think Mr. New has some experience that it's relatively inexpensive in terms of most likely less than $5,000. So it would be one of those that if y'all were to be receptive to that, you can utilize SPOS money for stormwater. We can, if the price were to exceed $5,000, I believe it would be prudent to come back before you all for that authorization, but up to.
Okay. If I understand, you would entertain a motion to approve up to $5,000 from SPOS revenue to repair stormwater on Connell Street to your specifications. Got a motion, second. Motion second, discussion. Being none, all in favor, vote by show of hands. That's unanimous, thank you.
Excuse me, sir. I think I was entitled to chance to be here again to hear what was
You,
going
Mr.
on.
Neal?
Do I have any?
We always
speak
happy to
here or
listen,
not?
always happy to listen. Would you stand up and state your name?
Name's Terry Neal. I'm the person in question, I guess, for this issue. You know, no doubt what Brandon has brought to your attention is heading in the right direction. It's bound to help things. Now, I guess my question is, and I want clarification on this again, is does that easement that runs through this development belong, the rights to that belong to the city of Jasper?
I believe that was determined that, to the best of our opinion, it is.
Okay. Now I have a question as to some issues that I have personally, which is property damage due to the overflow of this water.
Speak.
I have damages within my home. I have damages outside of my home that are off of the easement, okay? These were due to the fact of, I don't know what, the easement not being maintained, not being adequate. I'm not sure what it is. Somebody more professional than I should be able to explain that. But I have damages to my yard. I have damages to my home that I need to have addressed.
Just speak.
Well, you need to turn in those damages to the city hall.
Okay. Now, what I would also like to request, if it's at all possible, is to get a copy of a letter stating that the city of Jasper does have rights to this easement and have everyone here.
Well, I tell you, with that question that you have, that we have the right to be there, not there.
Yeah.
Probably we prefer not to be there.
I agree. I prefer not to be there.
But Mr. Pickett, y'all can determine that before the city of Jasper goes on their property would be wise.
Well, yeah, like I say, evidently he's already reviewed this.
What Mr. Pickett basically just told you was, for the first part of your question, you're basically going to probably have to file suit against the city of Jasper, and that will be determined. Pardon?
That's what I don't want to do.
Well, that's about the only way we can help you.
Does it make any sense that I'm suing myself?
Yeah, because we get sued
That's
regularly, but you're claiming damages.
Correct.
The city is going to take the position, it was God's will, basically, that the flash flood happened. I had damage to my yard as well. Not to the extent that you had, but I did have to do some repairs. But that will be determined, this council making those decisions would be very unwise from our legal perspective.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to make them, I'm just saying, now that we have this established.
And we will turn that into our insurance when you do that.
All right, that's what I speak with.
No, you bring it to the city clerk or to Brandon, and he'll get it to whomever he needs to. Mr. Douglas, yes, sir.
All right, that was
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Here we go.
Anything else on stormwater?
That's it, Mayor. I got it.
All right, that's all the old business. Let's go to new business. Doris Wigington Park update. Mr. Keller.
You don't want to have a bathroom break there, you know?
Well, we could. Anybody need to? I would entertain a little motion to recess.
So moved.
5 minutes. I think you need to go, right?
Your Honor, I've got some handouts from across the council.
We're back in session. We just took a little recess.
May I approach the council with some
Yes, sir.
handouts? Bill, you have to get one this time, so it's all with your list.
What you got?
He wanted to do.
Yeah, he would.
He had a presentation and he couldn't get it done.
Now, we can do it with this. I was hoping to show some of the stuff. Brandon, here's one for you. And I'll just kind of, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to start bringing my own laptop here on the presentation.
If you're gonna count on Lonnie, you might as well.
Yeah. technologically savvy. Hey, I was impressed by watching Lonnie operate the GIS. It was kind of interesting to see him fire that up down in his office. Your Honor, Counsel, I wanted to remember last year I kind of bullied my way in, well, earlier this year, I kind of bullied my way in here in regards to helping with the Doris Wigington Park, and I've been assisted with by John and Ann in regards to what we've done there, and wanted to give you an update in regards to what we've come across. If you look on the handout that I gave you, the first picture is Doris Wigington as it exists via imagery in 2015. One of the things we wanted to accomplish was to give it more of a lived-in look to where there was more of a presence. If you'll turn to the first image, what we've done is a couple different things. The first thing we did is we installed 4 gates, and these gates are at the positions there that you'll see the little black and white, looks like a propeller there. We put gates in at each and every one of those positions. It took a little bit of time to get those gates installed, but they're very nicely done. I think then if we would have had this fired up, we would have shown you the gates. They're very nice. They're painted yellow. They've got reflectors on there, and they're strategically placed at each and every one of these entrances. So we've now protected that part from ingress, egress. And if you remember, what we wanted to do was to put signage on there that said open at dawn, closed at dusk, and we've done that. Those signs have been installed on the gates, and what we have now are 4 gates ready for the police or whomever is going to be in charge of this to open these things at the appropriate time. I haven't talked with Councilman Snavy and Faust in regards to this, but we're ready for that. We wanted to make sure that we got all the gates in place. The second thing that we did was we installed chimney swift towers. Chimney swift is a bird that has suffered duress from people corking up their chimneys and trying to become a little bit more economically sound in regards to having heat go out their own chimneys, and they have been at a detriment. So what we did is we created a couple of chimney swift towers to enhance the populations. Now, I don't know if those towers in Doris Wigington are being populated, but at the same time I created a tower in the back of my office, and we've got animals in there, so hopefully they are occupying those as well. The next thing we did, and I kind of did this of my own volition, we wanted to make the park not necessarily a dog park, but dog friendly. And what we've done, and if we had this pulled up, I would show you that we have 4 dog stations strategically placed throughout the park now. And it doesn't say anything in regards to, pets on leashes or anything like that. It just provides the little bags like you do over here in your dog park where it says responsible pet owners, and hopefully if they wish to, there's bags there. I would imagine most of the people will let their animals defecate out in the woods there because it's pretty much an open park. Even though this is a wildlife sanctuary now, I don't think that dogs are going to necessarily hurt anything, that they're not going to cause any problems. So we've done that. We've also, since we were last year, I believe I let you guys know that we are now a wildlife sanctuary. We went through the Audubon Atlanta, and they came up and they kind of blessed the property just due to the biodiversity that was already there. Also the fact that we created the habitat that we did, the water that's there, the natural food source. And so now it has the designation of a wildlife sanctuary. We also have taken signage and we have posted it around the perimeter of the property denoting that it is a wildlife sanctuary. So if we go back and we look, and you have this in your folder in regards to the money that we spent. I did not put that in our presentation, but I wanted you to know what we've gone through. It's really a minimal cost to be able to get the park into the position that it's in. I would do it again. I think it's been very nice to be able to do that. I had a picture of city police car going down through the middle of the park. It was very nice to see that there now is a presence, and I think that was 9/10 of the battle won, that we wanted to make it look like somebody was there. We wanted to make it look more cared for. I think the wildlife sanctuary in itself is truly going to bring a little bit more notoriety, not necessarily notoriety, that's kind of a pejorative term, but a little bit more awareness that we have a park there. Now, one of the things that we've been doing there is via this chimney swift, and once again, I had this great video. I believe he happens to be related to you, John Luke's office over here, and you could probably see them now if you were sticking your head out the window. Our chimney swift population happens to be occupying his left side chimney there, and it's a phenomenal thing to be able to see. These animals at about 1900 at night, you begin to see maybe one, maybe two animals, and they begin to swarm around the top of his chimney, and it goes from maybe just a couple of animals to thousands of these things, and they swarm and almost on cue, and how they communicate with one another, it's worthy of a PhD thesis. They begin to dive into the chimney, and then they all get in there, and it's just like someone had flushed the toilet. The animals are all in the chimney, and there's no more birds in the air. This is worthy of celebration. Here we go. Let's see, Mike.
I've always known he was full of it.
Let the record show that was the mayor's son. Let's go to and go to the slideshow there, if you would, under animate. Let's see, it's under slideshow here, Lonnie. Slideshow, right there. Right up there. But this is really a phenomenal video here. If we can, I can't find your cursor here.
Not on that live screen.
Well, if you're either like me to come over and fix it with
Yeah, really, Bill, come over and fix it for us. But anyway, folks, what I think we ought to do here, we're already providing wildlife habitat at Doris Wigington Park, and we have an existing population within the downtown city limits. People have celebrations for these things all over the place. Swifts on Sunday, and what I think that we ought to do is we ought to make these guys superstars, because one of the things, and what I was told when I first came here, is one of the things that we do have to offer is this is a beautiful place. And watching these animals amass and go down the chimney there is worthy of sitting there and drinking a beer and watching the animals do that. Last night, Amberly and I were there with my daughter, and we were sitting there, and some gentleman pulled up in his car and said, "What are you guys doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to go get my wife." And I thought, well, he'll never be back. Sure enough, he came back with his wife, and we all sat there and watched these animals go in. So what we would like to do, and the Atlantic Coast Conservancy is going to do, we've got, yeah, there we go. Only can you hit page down? Yeah, there we go. Keep going. Let me briefly, and if you'll operate for me here. This is Doris Wigington as it exists right now, and just hit page down. This is where your gates are out here on the perimeter. This is Jeanette, and this is Lumber Ridge. Go ahead, next slide. These are the gates. They're very nicely done. Jeff McCowan did these, so all four of them are done like this with reflectors on there. And this is the sign. I showed you a sign very similar to this. Park closed from sunset to sunrise. Doesn't mean the park's closed, it just means it's closed to traffic, to cars. Once again, here's our two chimney swift towers. Next slide, please. And these are our two chimney swift towers. The tower that we have behind my office is just the tower. We don't have the kiosk that's attached. And what we'll be doing is creating signage that will go along there, interpretive signage that says something in regards to the bird's history and what we're trying to do. Next slide. Yeah, guys, I'm sorry, I'm right your way. And right here, this is the location, and we strategically located these dog stations. Next slide, Lonnie. So this is what your dog stations look like. This just says, please clean up after your pet, and it's got bags. Now, I did talk with Brandon, and Brandon suggested that whomever services your dog stations at your dog park could also put bags in there. actually, Emily came up with a very good suggestion in regards to having a netted, almost like a trash bag, not a trash bag, almost like a trash receptacle where you put the recyclable bag or the plastic bags that you get from Ingles and whatever, which might be a good idea. Certainly these costs are minimal, but it might be a good idea to use that where they could just pull it out if they choose to be responsible pet owners. Next slide. And this was our ribbon cutting. You can see Lonnie back there in the back and John wielding the scissors. This was, we paid X amount of dollars, and you can see that on there to get the certification, but the folks for Audubon were quite pleased with how nice the park was. Next slide. And these are this is the signage that's on the complete perimeter of the park now. We do have 2 large signs, and I wanted to get the advice of Councilman Snavy and Councilperson Snavy and Faust in regards to where they'd like to put those. They need to be up on, someplace that they can't be broken off. Next slide, please. So these are the next steps. Close the external gates at dusk, reopen at dawn, construct removable barricades. Now, Councilman Raphael was out there and he saw someone just driving on the trails. It would be nice if we could put an internal barricade, something that you could unlatch or something like that, but there are people driving in there and there's no barricade that stops them from doing this. Regrade the ingress-egress coming from Lumber Company Road. It's getting quite rutted. That would be this trail here. Improve the paths. I've talked with Lonnie. From what I understand, the city now has a paving machine that would pave of the ilk of what you're looking for, a 5 to 7 foot path. And then a star is born, and that's where I want to talk to you about the chimney swifts. Next slide, please. This is a picture, and you see J.L. Weaver here. This is the animals. They begin to amass about 1915. Next slide. There, whoop, back up. One more. There you go. Now, I don't know that you can get to this, but what you would see is these birds began to fly around John Luke's office, and then they began to tumble into this chimney, and there must be 2,000 birds that get in there, and they twitter, and then at the end of it's almost like you want to stand up and clap for these animals. Next slide, please. And this is what we're going to do. The Atlantic Coast Conservancy, we are going to run a full-sized advertisement in the newspaper next week that says, Downtown Jasper, greatest show on earth. And I would like to say that I invented this, but one of my committee members, nature's WMDs, the weapons of mosquito destruction. These animals eat 12,000 mosquitoes a day, each animal. This is why you're not getting bitten when you go downtown. These animals are they're vacuum cleaners for insects. And so what this does, it talks about coming into the downtown area. It talks about what we've done to proliferate and come to the downtown area. Shop, eat, enjoy. And we want to make stars out of this. One of the things I've spoken with the city manager about, I would like to create the flags that go on the lamppost. And these animals are getting ready to migrate. They migrate down to the northwestern sector of South America. But they do come back, and when they come back in the spring, I would like to be able to create something like this to be able to put it on the things to celebrate these animals. Next slide, Lonnie. And this is one of the things that we've done. We've created a t-shirt which we will be throwing from our Mardi Gras wagon at Marble Festival, and you've got nature's weapons of mass destruction on the front, and then on the front, and I really like this with the stamp and the saying that says, Jasper, Georgia, it's for the birds. Folks, we should make stars of these little guys. It's never going to hurt us, but I think that it puts our green foot / ecological foot forward, and we more or less enhance and expound upon the success that we've done at Doris Wigington Park, because the people that want to see this are people that will come to town, spend money, and it's also visible from the back of the old mule house, and people can watch it from the deck there. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do this. This has been an enjoyable thing, and you saw from the price, we didn't invest a whole lot of money. So hopefully Doris Wigington Park is going to be a destination for folks. I'd be glad to show you the video at some particular time, and if you have any questions, be more than happy to answer them this time.
Any questions, Council? Yes?
I'd just like to thank Robert for all the hard work and all the time that he's put into it. It's just starting to show. It really looks good, and it's really stepping up. We appreciate everything that you've done.
It's a pleasure. And as we go forward, folks, with the new Perot Park, I would suggest, and these are inobtrusive towers to put in there, people can watch these animals come and go, and it's a biological lesson in itself. So please think about this, and I believe that we could go to the public and say, we'd like to build another tower, we'd like to build another tower. And if you'll notice on there, the cost of these is not cost prohibitive, it's just a couple $1,000. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert.
One question, what are they doing today?
They're out hunting, they're always on the
They'll
move.
come back
And they come back at dusk to go back in, and Your Honor, it's like flushing a toilet. They all go in, there's no more birds. They're just in for the evening. And it's phenomenal to see.
Item B, Marble Festival use of public space.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you all are aware, the annual Marble Fest is upon us nearly, and as such, the chamber had requested, you'll see on your agenda, the use of public space. Obviously, I've incorporated some of the components of the Marble Fest from the parade, which I think is Saturday, October 5th at 10 a.m. is more of an update, FYI, along with city staff assisting in some sanitation and the stage. However, tonight, we would be seeking a special events license, similarly to what we did earlier in the summer, spring, the Pickett in the Park, which is the special events license that permits the sale of alcohol on a temporary basis. The Chamber would like to incorporate this as a component of their festivities just for Saturday, October 5th. It would be contained to the section of the park and ride, the Veterans Memorial Park side. That is being requested. That is, I believe, new to the event. But beyond that, I believe it's pretty well, I think in its 39th year, so you all are pretty well acclimated to it. This is my first one. So I believe Amberly Godfrey's here. Should you have any questions or comments or concerns, she may be able to address.
Okay. Amber, do you have anything to say?
I would like to reiterate that the alcohol will be contained. We will have security so it does not come across Veterans Memorial Boulevard or across the bridge. And it's only in that area because we are having the Egg Fest in that area.
So, Brandon, you were asking for a motion. Would you give me the details of the motion just in case we missed it?
Yes, staff would be asking for a special events license permit for the sale of alcohol on a temporary basis for Saturday, October 5th, for the conjunction with the Marble Fest.
Entertain a motion. Need a motion.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor, vote by show of hands. It's unanimous. That's item B, and we got to go through P, Mr. Copeland. So, go, Brendan. Item C.
Yes, sir.
You kind of took in that just a moment ago, but go ahead again.
Yes, sir. This is the the Cornbread reunion. I think is a recurring event. However, it is being requested in a different location rather than the park or the green space that has been held at in the past. They're wanting to use the specific section of D.B. Carroll at the intersection of Mark Whitfield out to the cul-de-sac. There would be no vehicular or pedestrian impact at the intersection. It would remain open, the intersection to vehicles, because the impact is basically at the beginning of the intersection that we would close off and barricade. Mr. Wilson with PACA has talked with the bank as well as the school system. The school system's receptive to them utilizing some of their space.
That'll be D.B. Carroll.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So staff is merely wanting to make sure that you all are comfortable with that closure from Friday, October 11th at 5 p.m. to Saturday, October 12th until approximately 6 p.m. For the Cornbread reunion.
Motion.
So move.
Motion.
Second.
Vicky. Motion. Johnny got a second. Discussion. Being all in favor, show of hands. It's unanimous. Item D, Freedom Walk.
And Mr. Mayor, the next item is probably more in keeping with just an FYI. There is no city resources being utilized, no impacts to street closures. It's just more of an FYI because it's in the same weekend as Long Table. It is being self-contained to Lee Newton Park. It's a new event. They have gone through the process of filling out the paperwork for Lee Newton reservation. There's no conflicts there. So once again, nothing more than just an FYI on that one.
Any questions, council? Thank you, Brandon. Item E, tour of homes.
And I believe this one, the first one was held last year. Once again, just for council and the public, it's a tour of homes, of some identified homes along South Main Street. They have not solidified the 5 homes yet. You'll see in your packet the flyer, Saturday, December 7th from 12:30 to 5 p.m. There's no closures, no real roadblocks other than they would be requesting a police officer and or sheriff's deputy to assist with any sort of pedestrian crossing one side of the road or the other.
The date again?
It is Saturday, December 7th. It's the same day as the parade, but as it's wrapping up at 5 p.m., there's no conflict in regards to that.
Sorry.
And so that's just, once again,
Probably with that we're having traffic, let's go ahead and let the council approve that action.
yes, sir.
Entertain a motion to approve the tour homes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Being all in favor, show of hands. Unanimous. All right, paving change order.
Yes, sir. As you recall, last month, I believe you all approved us authorization for the low bid to begin doing the paving. When the paving contractor got out on site, there were a few roads, specifically Noah, Bill Wigington Parkway, and Bryant Street and Summit Street. They identified as a candidate for some deep patching. They advised they could just do the contract as is and do the overlay, but they'd be remiss if they did not at least offer to do a cutout and do a deep patching that would help sustain the pavement longer than just 6 months or a year. So with that, staff will be seeking out additional monies of up to $60,000. The reason for that, it would most likely be about $39,000 to $40,000 for Noah. They've identified several sections along Noah.
They've milled that already, haven't
They've milled the corners. They've identified the middle sections that they would cut out sections and do a deep patching before they came in and overlaid. We told them to hold off until after this meeting.
they? Have y'all reviewed those deep patching requests?
Yes, sir. What they were originally proposing was 6-inch, but we can get by with a 4-inch to allow for about 260 tons at about $150 a ton.
So they're gonna dig out the alligator in evidently,
Yes, sir.
and how many square feet are they talking about?
I don't have that exactly in front of me. Lonnie, I'm not sure if you know the exact square feet.
We have not measured the exact square feet, but it's from the area, but about halfway from L&W Trucking, about halfway from between there and our lift station, all the way up to where the road makes 3 lanes. So it's quite a bit.
I saw that today.
It's quite a bit of work. They're
They're gonna take all that out?
They'll mill all that down 4 inches, And that's the reason Noah is gonna be
They're
such.
not gonna take out the alligator and get to the base?
Yeah, I mean, they'll go down, they said they first wanted to go 6 inches, but at the cost and the amount of it that they found, they said they could do 4 inches.
There wasn't but 2 inches of pavement on it, was
Well,
it?
they're,
Original pavement?
I don't remember, about that.
In order to take out the alligator, they've got to take out all the pavement, if that's their plan.
Their plan is to go 4 inches deep.
Okay. That'd be 4 inches of pavement, if you want to basically put on top of, put on top of alligator, and they've got pavement, bad pavement on, good pavement on bad.
Right. That's the reason they don't want to guarantee that section right there more than 6 months or a year.
Council, I recommend we watch them, no, don't mean just trust them, but watch them close to make sure that we're getting to the problem, because if they're going to charge us $60,000 in addition, they need to do quite a bit of work for that $60,000.
And yes, sir, and what would happen is, what staff would be doing would be evaluating within the NOAA, but then there would be the other 3 sections that are smaller, which is about 15,000 estimated. So what we would do is, there's about 55,000 worth of identified work. We would just be asking for about a 5,000 variance of not to exceed 60. We've communicated with the contractor that our expectation is that whatever we're authorized tonight, that would be expected to hold true for a year, because once again, they said they'll go in with the contract overlay, but if it crumbles, then it's on us.
Okay, council would entertain a motion for the $60,000 for staff to oversee the expenditure, and I'm sure the council would like to have pictures at the next council meeting as to where they spent the $60,000. With that, would entertain a motion.
So moved.
And a motion to approve $60,000 of SPOS money in addition to the original bid for repair of existing paving. Is that what you said, Ian?
Yes.
Need a second? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Being all in favor, vote by show of hands. Thank you, council. Thank you, Brandon. I think that would be kind of neat to see where we spent the $60,000 in addition.
Yes, sir.
Okay, item G, water tank painting change order.
This one, Mayor and Council, is going to be very quick. There is no item to request for change order. About 4 o'clock today, David, Chris Bourget, and I, along with the paint contractor, the paint supplier, was on site. He confirmed through his testing and analysis that the contractor's original hesitation with the gumming of the existing was not invalid, but it did not warrant him to then not warrant his 15-year. So there's no change order. We move forward with the bid. It's communicated to the contractor. We'll get our 15-year paint back at the upon bid price.
Okay. So thank you. We'll move forward with that. That's good news. I guess you climbed the tank.
David did.
Thank you, David.
That particular paint guy, he did climb it today, didn't he?
Pardon?
He climbed it today?
He did a cut test
He didn't go
on
to
the
the top?
base. No, sir.
He got over it, okay.
He did a cut test on the base.
Item H, Grandview Pipe proposed purchase.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Finance received 3 proposals. As you recall, we had looked at, from a financial standpoint, the $75,000 cash budgeted in this fiscal year, to break it out into 3 phases to just correspond with our cash flowing, so we're just not doing it all at once. The second ask, if you will, is we are asking for authorization.
Phase 2.
Yes, sir. And this one, the cost, we did ask them to hold 30 days. So it's going to go into the 1st of October to allow us to get some receipts in for September to just help continue adding to our coffers. The 3 quotes, Mayor, if you'd like me to read them.
Please.
Calhoun Meter Company at $27,055.20. Borderline Waterworks, $28,034.94. And Core and Main at $28,372.50. So the apparent low quote was Calhoun Meter Company. David and I looked at it. It appears they've met all the specs. The reason this elevated cost more than the first phase is the ductile iron and to get across the creek. I think this will allow us to get across the creek.
So $27,000.
$55.20.
Entertain a motion to approve the expenditure of $27,055 and how many cents? 20 cents. For the continuation of the water line project to Grandview.
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
Motion second, discussion? Being all in favor, will show of hands. Unanimous. Item I, leachate proposed negotiation for additional.
And I will tell you, Mayor and Council, I'm going to lean a little bit more heavily on Mr. Hall if he'd like to come join me. I believe this has got a history in terms of the leachate, but not sure exactly what we're going to end up asking other than David's got some good news about proposed additional entity or user of leachate.
Pine Bluff Landfill has recently purchased Eagle Point Landfill, and so they're going to be in control of our leachate totally after the first of the year. And we were a little concerned about that to begin with, but now Pine Bluff has come to us and asked us if we can be as a backup to them with LJ right now. So it's not that we're going to take as much as we're taking from Eagle Point, but we're going to try to help Pine Bluff as much as we can to where maybe we'll be in a good standing. Mayor's outside outline, we'll be in their site because we'll already be taking their leachate before the first of the year, before they get in control of Eagle Point also. So what we'd like to ask.
Are they agreeing to our contract?
Yes, they're going to, existing contract, same as Eagle Point, just allow Brandon to, talk with them and get them to sign. Yeah, it's going to be the exact same contract. Their leachate is not as concentrated as Eagle Point's, so it won't be, nowhere near the pricing, but I think it'd be good for us to try to help them out as much as we can right now.
Anybody ask about, would it take more of our, give a better price on our city garbage?
I don't know enough for to ask them anything, but
I know.
we'll be in control of
You
everything.
might drop that one of these days. Okay, so entertain a motion to allow staff to continue negotiation with Pine Bluff.
Yes.
What's their name?
Pine Bluff Waste Management.
Okay.
Is
Okay. Would entertain a motion to allow continuation of negotiations and maybe do business with more leachate? Will we be able to handle that on the present permit?
Yes, we're having our engineers and EPD look at that right now. We'll get complete approval before we start.
Make a motion that we allow staff to move forward with.
And bring us a contract of some sort. Add that to the list. Is that what you said, Ian? Contract of some sort. Okay, need a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Being all in favor, with show of hands. Thank you, Council. Health insurance renewal. Brandon?
Yes, sir.
Young David talked about that?
I think he's well versed in it. For all intents and purposes, Mayor and Council, we haven't really had any sort of increase. However, because it is the time of year that we have to give GMA, Matt Bidwell was our MSI consultant, have to give them the blessing from the Mayor and Council to keep everything as is. You'll notice in your packets, I did an overkill of an analysis specifically to identify that the existing plan versus the renewal, if the city were to absorb just the city's contribution of 2.95%, and then the employees would have the contribution of their share. You'll notice at the very end of the spreadsheet, the savings is approximately $4,000 to $5,000. And with that, staff, Lisa, Stella, and I have both agreed that it's probably not worth the administrative task or hurdles to do any changes to employee contributions, but rather the city would just absorb the full amount, but need y'all's guidance on if y'all are receptive to that.
I make a motion that we follow staff's recommendation.
Second?
We got a motion and a second. Discussion. Give me some numbers. I'm looking at them, but for the,
Yes.
for the.
For the public, the renewal premium, let's see here, the renewal premium is at $1,146,474 even, up from the $1,113,601. And wouldn't you know it, I did not enumerate the exact amount, but it was around $32,000. That was the increase, and there was about a $28,000 increase for the city, and about a $4,000 increase if we spread it out to the employees.
Okay.
And that was the recommendation of just saying, us just absorb the $32,000.
Okay. That's in addition to.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just wanted to explain it a little bit. Thank you so much. Next item.
Motion to second.
Retirement.
No vote.
Did we do the vote?
No, make the motion.
I thought we could vote, then I asked the question. Thank you so much. All in favor, vote by show of hands. That's unanimous. Item K. Don't worry, Mr. Copeland, I can get in the P real quick. Item P. Budget, let's give retirement benefits, item K.
Yes, sir. Mayor, Council, as you are aware, the GMA, Georgia Municipal Association, we are part of the Georgia Municipal Employee Benefit System. We have a defined benefit plan through GMA. We were advised back in July that we would have to either restate our plan or basically I had advised them that I had previously in the spring explored some modifications, but I had not brought it to council. So I said, if I have to bring it to council for a restatement, I'd like to bring it before council to at least provide options as I do. So before you tonight, you have a memo that essentially takes about 40+ pages and tries to summarize it. Mayor, I will do my best to just look at a summarization. The current plan is an ordinance and adoption agreement with an addendum that could be restated and resubmitted to GMA to remain in compliance with IRS standards, which means that GMA has a pool of money that they keep that basically when it's not taxed. So that's the reason this has been initiated. Our normal retirement is 65 years old. It's calculated at a 1.25% multiplier, meaning that you, upon your age of 65 years old, you take your years of service. If you're vested in the plan at 10 years, take anything above and beyond that, multiply by the 1.25, and then divide by 12 months for your monthly benefit. That plan is nearly fully funded at 98%, meaning that, it's a bad analogy, but the way I understand it is if your mortgage is paid for, you're making payments annually to maintain that percentage fully funded, that should something happen and everything is done away with the organization, your plan is funded. It is good to have. Philosophically, you have different entities that choose not to fund it at the recommended level. They may lag behind it at 50% or more or less. funded, and you have some entities, as we currently are, that are nearly at the 100%.
May I?
Yes, sir.
State, last year before last, I thought we were going to have to present a fully funded program. What was the legislation, do you recall?
I'm not briefed on that, no, sir.
Okay, if you would get a chance, ask. I thought they were going to force us to, that's good to hear those numbers, because I'm glad we got to that point, because used to it wasn't that way.
And as a best practice, it is good to be a viable percentage, and that's why I said philosophically, you've got some that, I'm not gonna name names, but I've come from entities where they're not as robust at that funding, so I think it's a good practice to keep, or if you do lag behind, what you do is you pay a little extra more on principal, kind of like you do with your mortgage.
Mr. Looney said back there, we talked about years ago, when the land was donated to the city, we looked at a little further behind, we might have to more fund the retirement benefit, and we actually have several acres given to the city a few years ago, and that's when we were looking at really close, but then things got better, so we didn't worry about it. And might look at that again one of these days.
Yes, sir. And that's part of what I bring to y'all tonight is the city has a cost annually of about $137,295. Basically what that does is that means that the city pays into the GMA pool to allow for retirees to continue to receive. That's in the most simplistic format. The attachments that you have in the 40+ pages walks through the whole plan benefit. What I'm asking tonight is direction, not on approving a plan, in so much as giving staff direction. We have to provide GMA with something by the end of the year. They originally had wanted August 31st. I asked them if that was to remain in compliance. They said as long as they got something from us by the end of the year, meaning either a restatement of our existing or a modified version, if we so inclined. There are the requisite 2 readings as an ordinance is in our charter. So therefore, if we were to modify, we have several months in this calendar year to go with, but I wanted to broach the subject at this meeting. If there's an appetite for any questions y'all may have for staff to review, if there's a desire for GMA to design this in a proposed plan, one of the things that I assisted with in another city was modifying the plan to allow for an age and years of service that equals 80 to be in existence, meaning that if you begin at the age of 30 and you work 25 years, then your 25 years plus your age at 55 meets 80. Therefore, your years of service is 80. That makes you eligible for the normal retirement age, 55 and not 65. If you chose to retire at 55 after meeting the rule of 80, you can. Now granted, if you decided to continue working until 65, what that does is it helps you with your years of service and your calculator. Part of what I would propose too is to increase the multiplier from 125 to 15. So if you're an employee that began in an organization and you're not going to meet the rule of 80, but once you reach 10 years vested, your multiplier goes from 125 to 15. So it's kind of a 2-tiered approach that you may have some that benefit from both. You may have some that benefits more just on the multiplier, because if they began here at the age of 40, then by the time they reach the rule of 80, they're close enough to 65 anyway that it would not be applicable.
Would that not put more drain on our?
It does cause the plan, an initial calculation by the consultant, to go down to 79% funded. So if you recall earlier, I said you were at 98. It would result in depleting it down to 75, meaning that on the books, you essentially have $1 million liability. Just to round numbers, in your packet, I think it's closer to the 9 something, but I'm saying $1 million because numbers change, things change. So for full disclosure, you are going from 98, 99 to 79, but as you stated, Mayor, you have the ability to make corporate decisions, business decisions. If you wanted to pay that down, to buy that down, you have perhaps other assets that you could cash out or otherwise to replenish that and cause that number to go up to more fully funded.
What's the advantages of giving employees 80 an hour? To the city of Jasper, not to the employee?
To the city of Jasper, it allows the organization to at least remain competitive in the marketplace of municipal management. If you're out trying to recruit talent across all sectors, then it provides you with an opportunity to say this is a benefit. The impact...
Does it get to retire at 55 instead of 65?
Yes, sir. And what that allows is, it does allow for, in 12 years that I was in Ackworth, I'm aware of 2 persons that actually took advantage of it. Not to say that it was not a good tool for us to utilize, but it certainly did not cause the mass exodus that you may think.
Would you get the full benefit of 55 that you would at 65, or would you have to continue working?
Your actual service calculator would stop at the time that you reach 55 if you decided to retire. If you stay with the organization, then because of continued years of service, if you decide to work to 60 or 65, those years of service would continue on. It just means that
You don't get paid.
at 55, well, you get paid for it. At 55, you're eligible. You could just...
But wouldn't the advantage be the city if that employee would actually retire? That we would not have to carry that older employee? Would that be the only advantage to the citizens of Jasper as far as
the idea is from...
not that we have anything against old people.
Well, the idea is your more tenured professionals would have a higher salary. So if you were to have been in the organization for 20 plus years, most likely whether you're a laborer or a department head, your salary is going to be higher.
You wouldn't let anybody 55 and out and still be here. That 55 means out, right? You got to go.
No, you do not have to. It's not a requirement.
55 and out, you don't have to leave?
Unless
What's
you...
the advantage to the city if we do that?
Well, right now, you can be beyond 65 and not have to leave.
I know, but
there is no
I thought,
requirement.
I got room that you're going to address that.
But once you're out though, right?
What happens is you have something called in-service. Currently, the plan, and this is once again one of the modifications that can be made. Your existing plan as is today is you have an in-service. That means if you are working for the city and you reach the age of eligibility, which in this case is 65, you can retire, meaning you can start drawing down from your defined benefits plan and then remain employed with the city. The modified plan, or any modifications to the plan, I would recommend, as well as GMA would recommend, as a practice, to remove the in-service. So what that means is, it is an incentive for someone to retire, because once you reach an age of eligibility, whether it's 65, whether it's 55, because under your existing plan, you have a early retirement of 55. That's in the old GMA handbook of how to design a retirement plan. You have 55, which is early retirement, 65, normal retirement age. And so what's happened is, in the competitive age of trying to recruit, retain, etc., it's the rule of 80. And what it does is it allows for, and remember, I'm just as equally a proponent of increasing the multiplier. So you have a 2-tiered approach here in terms of you have the age and years of service, which is the 80, whatever you meet that golden rule. And what I was proposing is a a multiplier. They are two separate issues. The increase multiplier can stand on its own. The rule of 80 can stand on its own. Both of these are just an incentive, I think, to.
I've looked at this over the years. People talk to me and talk to you about this. And I believe that if you're going to exercise your out means out. If you're going to be 80 and out, the whole idea for the city of Jasper is to be out, because right now you're 65 and you're still in, and we've carried this for a long time, so I think you're on the right track. We've got to relieve ourselves of that burden, because they're getting a pretty good package to leave. To get that package and still draw a paycheck here, I think it'd be the big issue.
No, sir. Now, what I would recommend is on the proposed modified plan, if you want to take advantage of the 80 and out and you retire, then at that moment, you're no longer employed with the city of
Okay, I
Jasper.
misunderstood you.
I'm sorry. So what happens is, I would request in the modified version, and remember, if you all gave direction to staff, we would merely put before GMA to design us a plan document that reflects some of these items. It can be tailored to suit.
Sounds like at a minimum, we needed some clarification on this law that we're required to be funded to a certain percentage. Correct?
And I'm
I
not,
remember hearing that. I remember Jim and I having conversations.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah.
It was a hot topic for a while, about 2-3 years ago. But I guess what you need, let me ask you one question. Did you contact GMA or did they contact us to tell us to reconstitute?
July 10th, they sent a letter, it's in your packet. It's in your packet. It says that to ensure continued tax favor treatment for members, the IRS requires that all GMEBS members, employers adopt the restated plan documents.
Okay.
So what I did was I asked them if we were going to at least explore, instead of, because they, number one, they gave us this on July 10th, and they said they wanted August 31. I said, first and foremost, we can't. Secondly, I'd like an ability to present to you all at least an option if you so pursue. And that's when they said, well, get it to us by the end of the year, either your restated plan or the modified. If you're going to modify it, we need to know something to have a couple of weeks.
I think the council needs to know, Dr. just asked, how much it's going to cost us if we're going to be fully funded, because this is going to kick us in the keister being funded if people exercise this, because you're going to have a lot more people on a retirement plan than you do presently. So just I think all eyes will be open for this.
Could we ask you to go back and look at them, or contact GMA about a modified version, and we can look at what he's saying with the funding of the 80 and out?
Council, however you'd like, if you'd like for me to ask them to, we have the plan that's in your packet, that's the restated plan, or excuse me, that is the current existing plan, that if you wanted to restate it, you could in its format. That's just what they sent. If you said we'd like for you to at least have them begin modifying, then what will happen is at your next meeting, hopefully I can get clarification on what any state requirements are for funding of the plans, and if there's a minimum or just seek clarification. Then at that moment, we can say the restated plan or the modified plan, and then at that moment, direction can be provided in terms of the reading of the ordinance either one.
Okay, and what we could do, we could organize a committee. You can do that. You might need a little bit of council direction before you come back to council with all the possibilities. Anybody want to volunteer for this committee?
I mean, I don't care to, because I want to move in the direction we need to.
Bill,
Yeah, well, let me form you a little committee, and I think this will carry on. I think you got to have it by December the 31st.
Yes, sir.
Restated. I think it'd be appropriate that we could have this committee report.
Just to clarify, do we want to just have the committee, or do y'all want to go ahead and have staff work on getting GMA.
You guys can do, you just need to run it, have the council up to speed on it when it comes, they can have good answers for us. Along, not that we don't trust staff, but this council will be happy to meet with you.
Okay. So table this until next month.
Yeah, we've got to, well, table what specifically you asking?
Well, we've got to either get a modified version. If we're gonna do that, we gotta have 2 readings for that. Would we not wanna go ahead and look at that versus
We're
the,
September, we got October, November.
We got that too.
but you gotta have,
Then we gotta have it by December.
Then again, ask me again what you're asking.
We were not asking for any approvals tonight.
Right.
What I was wanting to do is present y'all with the idea that if
That's what I took.
we could, I do not feel comfortable at the staff level telling GMA to even modify the version to present to y'all. If y'all say, get a modified
The
version.
council, I think, would like to look at one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we entertain a motion to ask for a modified version to compare against our existing retirement plan.
Yes.
so moved, yeah, I agree.
Got a motion second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Dr. Parker made the motion, Ann made the second. Any discussion?
I think Ian
I
made
made
the
the
motion,
motion.
John
I
made.
thought you made the motion, I heard you say it.
Yeah. Either way.
Watch this. Ann gets the motion, John gets the second, Doc's out. Okay. Any discussion, any further discussion, being none, all in favor, vote by show of hands. Unanimous. I swear I heard you make a motion.
I started, I was trying to, and
Yeah,
Andy
Andy.
beat me to the punch.
Okay.
Right. I'm ready.
Next one is millage rate advertisement request for approval. Brandon, Lisa,
Skip budget.
did I skip something? I checked the thing off. Let's go back to item L, budget preparation update. Let's go and fall right into item M. And Brandon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, and Lisa and I have spoken, and just to give you an update on the budget, we did meet last week with most of the departments, if not all, but the one, and we are getting prepared to go before the committee to, I guess, talk about the preliminary budget. Unfortunately, it is our determination that we have not received the tax digest from the county, and as such, I believe we're precluded from asking for anything to do with millage rate until we get the tax digest. So we have not,
Can't calculate the rollback without the digest.
Anything happened today?
They called and promised it today, but they didn't bring it today.
Is he out of the hospital?
I'll send you back, but
and Mayor and Council, for your information, you may have picked up in the August 7th minutes that Lisa read that Chris Bourget stated that USDA was wanting to make some sort of action before September 30 as regards to the USDA loan. It is our understanding that we're going to be provided basically a letter or notification that we're going to have to make a decision before September 30. So we're most likely going to have a special called meeting to address that, at which time what Lisa and I discussed was if we have the digest, we might could have a meeting whereupon we address both items. A lot of uncertainty, but that's kind of at least keep us somewhat on track, I believe.
Okay, so really we can't do anything with item M. Item L was just basically an update.
Yes, sir.
Item M is millage rate advertisement request for approval. You can't determine that without a digest. And just for, this is a county responsibility from the tax office, commissioner's office. And I understand he's had health issues.
he was sick last week. I usually get it before, last week, but
Brandon, if
I
you
think he
need,
had software issues too, that was the.
would you go down tomorrow to the county office, knock on the door, and explain to them that this is holding the city council hostage, and we need it yesterday, and they by law have to have it to us. And so,
I will communicate by law, they do have to have it. Yes, sir.
Please do, or I'll make a phone call myself. This is ridiculous. This is putting us in harm's way.
Yes, sir.
You can say the mayor sent me if you want to.
I will,
Okay.
I will communicate.
This is not right. The county have theirs?
They told me she had hers. I went down there last week, tried to get it, and he was gone. Tax
We
machine.
got Nelson talking
But I
about the
ran
same situation.
Ran into Faye, she said she had hers, so I understand it.
Okay. Surely we got something that we can, if we have a call meeting next week.
Because I've been advised that USDA is going to make some sort of recommendation on the other item in September, before September 30, we're going to have a special call meeting about that anyway.
Still gonna put us pushing advertising and all the things we have to. We want to have a couple of, what if you can't even determine what you're gonna spend yet until you get this. Okay. No action on item M. Request approval, okay. With that, we'll table that until a call meeting, probably more than likely. Item N, application for reduced water rates and sewer rates. Lisa? Reduced rates.
Oh, sorry, right.
Steve, and sometimes this goes on to midnight.
I've left it in my office. I have it in my office.
Would you go get it, please?
Yeah, I feel wait on it. Sorry.
What's wrong with you? Not looking forward to this?
This is nothing new.
You want your goal to be transparent.
So quiet.
We're waiting on you. Council, this is a application for reduced rates. Very familiar. You gotta be over 65 here. It's your only requirement. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Got a motion to approve the application.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, discussion. Being all in favor, vote by show of hands. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, item O, street dedication, Mountain City Drive, Brandon. I believe you got two of them.
Yes, sir.
OMP, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Council, there had been in some of our due diligence resulting from our paving, we kind of communicated that we could not source the exact time where the city took over basically these, or at least this one and another one, Mountain City Drive. As such, we're just merely asking you all to accept this as a public road. For our
That's OMP, or you want to do it individually?
I'd like to do OMP just for the record, Mayor.
Okay, O is Mountain City Drive. Book of housekeeping, basically, couldn't find any documentation of acceptance of the road, which can fall through the crack with developers, especially between 2008 and 2015, they're more likely the bank owned it at the end. But entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we
Accept the road.
accept the roads
Need a second?
for record.
So,
Motion is second, discussion. Being none, all in favor, vote by show of hands. That's unanimous. And P, street dedication, Philadelphia Lane. Brandon?
Same thing, Mr. Mayor. We had looked at, we were obviously in the area of paving, and as such, just wanted to tighten up for future occurrences. We'd like for y'all to consider formally accepting this into.
That's the same area, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Entertain a motion to dedicate or accept Philadelphia Lane. Got a motion? That's John.
Second.
Ann, that's second. Discussion? Being all in favor, vote by show of hands. Thank you, council. Unanimous. Thank you, Brandon. Mayor's report, Economic Development Hiring Committee update. Dr. Crocker?
we had a meeting on, did a meeting last week and in reviewing the stakeholders' questions and surveys. We have just begun the designing the structure and governance, and we also had a conference call today where we're just beginning to work on the budgeting of this position. So we're on time frame for, we had 120 days, so we're really, we reset that clock, I believe in July. We're really right about on time frame for what we expected.
Okay, so you do have the group lined up to find the person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We're trying to get to, the next phase will be to advertise for the person. And in order to do that, we want to make sure we have all the, how's this going to work, who's going to be in charge, how much, and how we're going to pay them, so.
Okay. Looking forward to an update on that. Yes, Ann, you have a question?
No.
Okay. Pearl Roper Pool Property Development Committee update, Dr. Proctor?
No real update on that. I think there is a cost analysis being done on the development of that park. And I think that if we're so fortunate to have the SPLOST dollars, SPLOST program approved, some of those dollars will be used in our Parks and Recreation designation, but no real update on that.
Okay. Item C, Cost Construction Aid Committee update, Councilman Fountain and Brandon and David.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Councilmember Fountain and I spoke, and he essentially not concurred, but there was still some information that had yet to reveal itself, which it now has, and I can disseminate to you all in just a moment. Actually, I'll do it right now. So when we're talking on it, you can at least see kind of what my thought process is as it pertains to this item. Specifically, Mayor, Council, this was an exercise that the Mayor afforded me the opportunity to work with Turnip Seed, David, the developer. Specifically, the 515 corridor from Harmony down to south of Racetrack, where recently 31 acres was rezoned to a PUD to allow for detached single-family residential of up to 180 units. Mr. Copeland's here tonight, one of the property owners, and what we have communicated was staff wanted to identify this corridor and see if everything in it were to develop out, what would it essentially mean for our system. We've got 5 lift stations, A through E, and there's about approximately, according to the engineers, 500 undeveloped acres that could be built out. 31 of which is what we're dealing with on the second part. So the cost in front of you is what our engineers have estimated to get sewer to the site. We do think, staff, not to undermine the engineer, but we do think that the cost is a little elevated due to the fact that they've taken what private contractors may have bid out on a different project elsewhere. We feel as though that utilizing in-kind and a partnership with the developer, we could curb a lot of the cost and to control a lot of the cost. We would be, as staff, at least asking council to consider incentivizing this project. It's been identified as an economically viable project of bringing detached single-family homes to that corridor. It's already zoned appropriately. It would allow us to extend our system, so there is the benefit that future tie-ons to the water, which is not included in this, but it's an incremental cost relative to the overall project. And to the mayor's point earlier in the service delivery, it opens up the opportunity if we wanted to loop it into the county system, put a meter on there at where the crossroads, and we've created the looping from Dunsfina south of 515 into development, and then on the back end to Worley. The impact to the pump stations, if you will, there's 3 that would have an impact. They're estimating a couple $100,000 worth of upgrades needed. Once again, it's all relative in terms of pricing. We've estimated that there will be some cost incurred, perhaps not to that extent. So for full disclosure, not to undermine the work from the consultant, but we've been in conversations with the property owner, and we've at least concluded that he's willing to present a cash payment to go along with this work, along with nearly an equal amount of half of that in-kind labor that we would have to incur the cost of anyway. I think that would amount to about $450,000 worth of cash and in-kind, $300 cash, $150. The reason we bring this up is if you look at the $3,500 per unit, that would be a cost of over $600, and we're not sure if that is sustainable model, at least for what we've been told by the developer. So we're willing to acknowledge that, put a little skin on the game on our end to get it accomplished.
Council?
I make a motion that we partner with the developer, the owner, and moving forward to provide what, taking their good faith offering to, and, partner with them to accomplish this.
Condense that motion for me for the record.
Yes, we would, what we would do is we would essentially curtail the amount due for cost of construction aid to $300 with an in-kind labor of what we've estimated about $150, but to enumerate that with the in-kind services, it could be less, it could be more.
Okay. You got that for the record?
Get all of
Okay.
this.
Yeah. Need a second?
Second.
Get a motion, a second. Discussion? Being none, all in favor, vote with your hands. Thank you, council. Unanimous. Okay. I don't make any mistake where I'm at. Item D. SPLOST 2020 committee update. John, Sonny, Brandon. Did I miss one?
I'm not sure, Mayor, if there's...
Yeah, it's item D. Okay, you got anything going on?
No,
Okay, we're pretty much done with it, aren't we?
I believe so, sir.
Okay, so let's just go ahead and take that off my
That's fine.
committee meeting. That's my fault, there's always something to be always added. I guess they're preparing for the vote now, aren't they? Item E, finance report, Lisa.
Council, Mayor, in your packet you have the finance report for the month of August 2019. In the general fund, we collected in loss, which local option sales tax, $116,583 for a year-to-date total of $911,020. That's compared to $834,628 for the prior year. We did get a cut, it's the first month that hit us, the TADT, and Brandon's been trying to research it. It was running around $30,000 a month, and we got surprised with a $6,200 check this month. So,
That's from tag office.
yeah. From what Brandon was saying, the county's taking more and maybe the state's keeping more, they've changed
Well, that
it.
sounds typical.
It was a good,
The legislature, just for the council's knowledge, and this would be brought up during budget, a colleague of mine has been bulldogging this for a period of years, from 2013. The enactment essentially was July 1 of this year, whereupon every community in Georgia, municipality, received a substantial loss in what they had originally received over years. So much so that you are looking at a half to 2/3 less in annual revenue. So
Not from a decline in sales, but a decline because of state and
Reallocation.
county reallocation.
the county and the school in the setup that the legislature had done, the allocations are going towards that. So the legislator has been made aware of this. A colleague of mine is working on trying to get that remedied, but even if that were to take effect, we've got the remainder of this calendar and fiscal year, and if any action's taken, you're, in the third quarter of next year for us.
GMA stood by and let this happen without any
I'm
response.
not sure. I'm definitely not qualified on this one, so I just reached out.
Okay, that's good news. Good information,
yeah.
but I'm not surprised. Slap this look off my face, okay?
In the water and sewer fund, we're at present showing a $70,000 loss in that fund. Part of it will remedy part of it when we run the transfer money back from the sanitation fund, which is showing a gain right now because we had to transfer money and buy that garbage truck. But still, I remind people of this I work with all the time, but we're, probably the water sewer fund, 30 to 50,000, and the bills come in the month after I get this report, so it's always a little
What last month
behind.
looked like?
I can't remember. I don't bring
Well, that'd
it.
be a good one, that would be a good one to look at. Okay,
That'd be a good comparison.
Yeah.
okay, sorry, go ahead.
That's about all I was going to talk about. Also attached to, you have the SPOS, what we've collected so far this year and what we've planning on spending to show you kind of where we're at.
What was our SPOS this month? Do you have it? I know if you look, but I'd rather ask.
$90,688 we got this month for a total of $779 collected the year. Our cash balance is $1.5 million.
So that's 20% of the sales tax, and so, we're gonna get 12.5, or 13, 13.5, 13 or 13.5?
13.5.
Okay. So you can do the math and figure out what county's taking from us on that level as well, so. Not old wounds or anything, but I can get this a pretty good lick. Okay, anything else, Lisa?
That's all I
Okay. Not that I wouldn't bring that up.
What's that, or 12.5, let's see.
I like
Slap one way or the other.
Okay, let's go to roads and other reports, Lonnie. Let's go to the other reports first before we look at roads.
Okay, Mayor and Council, as far as, we've been in contact with Parker Striping. They're supposed to be, if something don't happen, moving into the city by the end of this week to start coming behind the paving project. the paving is going good. The crews is working real good with us, making sure that we put in all the risers and everything for manholes, nothing's paved over. We're looking at today and tomorrow about the next bid package. We're gonna, if everything is on the time frame, we're gonna try to get that second bid package out and get it, bring it to you in October. If we get it all and get that final stage paved, there's not gonna be but about 3 to 4 miles of road on it. So, and then that,
Too bad you didn't get it with this weather.
yeah, and then we're going to, however, all the streets that's asphalted in the city of Jasper with this splice, 6 years, every street, asphalt street will be paved. And there's been some questions about the mass arm that's laying over at Community Bank. The problem with that was when they tried to put it up, either they messed up the boats or the boats were already messed up. They don't know what, that holds it on. And those are really strengthened, tempered boats, and they've had to order them from Minnesota, so they're waiting on them to get here.
Thank you, Lon.
Lonnie, could you clarify for the public that the outskirts of the downtown sidewalk is the DOT and not the city of Jasper?
You talking about on Main Street?
Yeah.
Yes,
Is there complaints?
You don't ever go for that?
the work has been done on Main Street with the traffic lights, the mass arms and everything. That is strictly DOT. The city of Jasper, they didn't come to us and ask for permission. They notified us and said, this is what we're going to do. So that is a DOT project.
It takes to protect that light.
Yes.
And the crosswalks.
I didn't-
It'll actually be a real crosswalk now, instead of people trying to run across it, they can cross.
It'll be nice to be able to walk across without getting run over. But people are complaining about that, thinking we did that. And I
Well-
don't have to say,
I'll take credit for it if you want me to have it.
hey,
Okay, I just messed my hand. Police report, evidently we're missing the chief of police tonight.
Chief Love was on vacation, so I'm
He
here to
didn't have
make the
anybody-
Popo report look
He
good.
didn't have anybody he trusted?
No.
Evidently not. Okay,
Last month, Jasper Police Department answered 777
well,
calls.
follow on, wait. Now, item H, fire report. Go ahead, Steve.
he's got both.
I got both.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I got both.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Fine.
I'm sorry, Greg.
But he didn't trust you.
He didn't trust me, he just stuck
He
me
just-
with it.
Okay, go ahead.
He's done it for me, so I couldn't say no.
I don't know if I've ever heard him give your fire report.
I am
probably
now.
He sent somebody else. Go ahead. These people want to go home.
Last month, the police department answered 777 calls from the 911 center. There were 40 motor vehicle accidents, there were 103 citations issued. Those were 1 DUI, 50 speeding, 1 seatbelt, 3 shoplifting, 4 reckless driving, 40 other violations, 1 suspended or revoked license, 3 possessions of marijuana. GSP issued 31 citations for a total of 134 altogether. 9 warrants were issued, 1 for cruelty to children, 1 for terroristic threats, simple battery misdemeanor, simple battery family violence, simple battery family violence felony, aggravated battery family violence, cruelty to children felony, party to a crime felony, and an obstruction, which was a misdemeanor. Miscellaneous other calls, 33 alarm calls, 15 disorderlies, 14 harassment calls, 1 burglary investigated, 13 trespassing or loitering, 32 suspicious activity calls, 17 domestic disputes.
All we do is some police department.
And don't ask me what they do any of that, because I don't know.
All
put out
right,
fires.
fire report, chief.
All right, last month, the fire department responded to 128 calls. Those were 1 structure fire inside the city, 2 outside the city, 2 vehicle fires in, none out, 1 grass fire inside, none outside, 13 motor vehicle accidents with injuries inside, none outside the city, 49 emergency medical calls inside, 28 out,
17 other calls inside, 15 outside the city. Through the end of the month, it's 924 total. Fire inspection looked at 3 sets of plans and conducted 23 inspections last month.
Questions, council? Thank you, Steve.
You.
With no other action to come before this council, would entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn.